kind of like a little bit of a cool sort of slant to it, but it's going to be more like this like a cool area that looks more like that, not this. So it's still in the warm family, but I want to put in those shadows. So I'm going to get something that's a little bit warmer first, a little bit more red, and just, is it super important that I nail the exact color? No, it's not. But right in that transition, that's what I've really noticed. Right in that transition of that cheek, it's nice and warm, and I want to go in there and put that in. And it's actually a little bit more red, a little bit more like that. I'm going to make it even more emphasized. Now, underneath his eyes, Sam doesn't sleep the greatest, so he's got some purples. They're kind of purple, right? They're just barely purple. They're not like, it's not screaming out like purple like this. It's not like, coming in and doing that. This is where it gets a little bit tricky with color. Like when I'm observing color, to try to relate it to other people and tell them why or how I'm thinking about all this. It's just barely there. That it's like a purple. So I'm going to put that in. Now I need to stick with the same value scheme that I have here, so I don't want to go too dark with this, but I'm going to put some purples in there. And they tend to happen. It looks like they're happening, somewhat before the transition happens here. So I'm going to throw them in. Now, as it gets lighter, it gets a little bit more cool. It gets some white added, but it kind of shifts a tiny bit towards the yellows. Just a tiny bit. We get a bit of that. And you can start to see these colors showing up, right? And you start to see it. Now, there's some reflected light, too. And that actually is a little bit cooler reflected light kind of bouncing in like that. So now we've got like just a generalized color scheme. And, there's actually some pinkish areas in the edge of the nose. It's kind of pink. It looks, I guess you can kind of see it there when I color pick, but it's definitely here. It's definitely more towards the reds. It's going to be somewhere in between the reds and the oranges. And it's sort of like these peachy colors here, right? So now I've got all these different colors showing up in the skin. How the heck am I going to get this to work? Well, I need to take that same color. I need to drop the values down. I need it to be a transition there because values are going to be super important. So once I get that down and I start dropping things in, now I can start creating the transitions. So now I can say this probably could be a bit darker, actually. Let's just make it a little bit darker in this area so the shadows are much more clear. In general, it would sort of be similar to that shadow right there. That's way too cool, though. I don't see it that cool. So, but now I'm gonna lower my opacity. I'm gonna make these transitions. So I have this warm that's showing up in here. I have this cool that happens right before this. Now watch what happens as I start creating these transitions. I'm sort of testing out the skin tone, and figuring this out off to the side. And this is, again, how you retain that expressiveness, because I'm working out the skin tones here first. Now, if I feel like the purples are getting way too strong, the warms it's a little bit lighter. Like the warms kind of got a little bit too orangey. Like they're a little bit lighter, and it's a little bit more like that right before it transitions in there. So I'm just gonna adjust that. But when I start getting these transitions worked out, and I kind of build this up, and I say like, okay, this is definitely lighter here. I don't want to go crazy light, but it starts to look more like skin. And it even has some like bluer areas. Like in here, there's like some bluer areas, like a little bit of like a tiny bit like blue or green. So I'm going to drop that in. Just a bit of that when I see that. And I kind of feel like Bob Ross when I'm doing this. Because I'm like, I'm just going to drop in a little bit of that skin tone. It's going to be nice, This happy little warm showing up in the... I'm going to check the chat soon, too. After I finish this this sort of skin ball thing, I'm going to check the chat, so don't worry. But look, all those different colors that are showing up, now I'm creating transitions between those values. I'm testing out that value scheme, that color scheme. Where are we at? Does it look like Sam's skin? Does it look like what we need over there? And I'm doing a quick test, and maybe it's a little bit too orange. Maybe it's a little bit too, too much red in the transition. Maybe it's not bad though. It actually, I think in the lighter areas, it needs to actually shift a little bit more towards the reds. Like, I think in these lighter areas, it's kind of a bit more like that. Yeah, that's a little better. It gets actually a little bit lighter, and there are some cools that are showing up around there, but again, it's just a hint of that. I'm not seeing like a slam dunk color like, yes, this is what the color should be. I'm just reacting to the colors that I'm seeing and really just getting the impression of those colors. And then I've got this reflected light that's coming in on the bottom section. We've got this. And again, like on this monitor over here, it looks very red, like it looks really warm in the transition. And over here, it looks a little bit more cool. So depending on how you're seeing it, you know, but it doesn't matter. The exact color doesn't matter. It's really the relationships that you're after, the color relationships. So as long as it gets, you know, properly warm before it turns into this shadow, it's fine. So, right, so now I've got something that's like an approximation of his skin, right? So it's an approximation. Now, again, I started from a mid-range. I started from a mid-range value. Like, I didn't go super bright. I had room to go. If I need to come in and, like, oh, whoa, that's not what I want to do. If I need to come in and, you know, I need him to look shiny, like he's wet, you know, I can do that at this point, right? I can come in and say, like, he's, like, got dolphin skin, and let's make him, you know, super shiny, you know, you know, come in and make him super shiny and glossy or whatever, you know, I can do that if I want, but, I have room because I didn't go crazy with the values. So I can come in and I have room to maneuver there, and the colors are reading more clearly. So the colors are reading more clearly, and it makes more sense overall because of that. Right, so I've got this area here, and I probably, based on what I'm seeing here, it spreads out, the highlights are there, but it spreads out pretty quick from the highlights. So I kind of could come in like this. And now we've got, you know, a texture and a skin ball that I think is at least heading towards really, you know, looking like what I'm seeing on him. And so that's his particular skin. His particular skin, and everybody is different. Everybody's different, and even when you think you've got someone's skin tone figured out, even if you've painted it 100 times, you put them in different lighting, and all of a sudden different things are emphasized and different things come out. It's just the way it is. So really interesting that way. So doing a quick little test like this off to the side will give you the info that you need, and then you can actually pull from it. You can color pick from this, and it will be much easier. So so I like to think about it this way. And this is a way that I'll do that very quickly. So I'm going through things with you guys, but I'll do this. I'll be like off to the side in oils or whatever. I'll come in and just, you know, boop, 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 put that down. And then I'll put a shadow down and drop that down. And I'll do it very quick. You know, because I don't need to render it out too much and just kind of block it in very roughly like that. But that's the idea behind it. And here, let's put... if anybody else comes in, let's put Sam's skin. And I would recommend trying to do this too. You know, when you're looking at this reference, like do that. You can get a bunch of references and just, you know, paint them. A bunch of references, line them up, try the different skin tones and stuff. Okay, so before I start applying this to the painting, I wanted to kind of give you an idea of my methodology. But before I do that, let me cover some of the questions. How do I approach art outdoors? It's tricky with oil, especially. You get reflections off of the paint surface. So you tend to make it too bright or too dark, depending on what the lighting scenario is outside. Like if you're getting a bunch of light on it, you'll end up either making it too dark or too light. You know, typically you end up making it way too dark. Like you bring it inside, and when it was out in the full sun, it looks one way, and then you put it in someone's house, and it's like super dark, you know? So you have to be really careful with that. You almost have to, you feel like you're working like high key when you're working outside with oils. But with digital, my iPad has made a huge difference with that. Like working outside, it's made a huge difference. Absolutely huge. So that's been really good. Yeah, but I like to work from life that way, and I like to just limit myself to a certain amount of time. If you try to sit outdoors for like 5 hours, the light changes too much. So do small stuff, simple stuff. Like save the long-term stuff for, you know, the studio work. Let's see. Okay. Okay. All right, let's see. I'm just going through and looking for questions. It's beginning to look razzy. Hey, Jerry, what's up, man? Thank you very much. Yeah, how do you cope with turpentine? Yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow. I use Gamsol, which is really tame. And I actually don't have it open like the majority of the time. The only thing I have open is like a little jar of medium, and that's like it. That's it. So more often than not, I don't even have to worry about turpentine. Like it's only used for cleanup, and you can clean up wherever. So I'll talk about that tomorrow though. I can do black and white grayscale portraits pretty well, but every time I try to go to color, it ends up really bad. Do you have any advice for getting into color from black and white? Yeah, Wing Dante, this is exactly what I just said. This is good. This was good. This is you're probably like, oh, he saw my question. No, it just worked out that way, right? This is really this is going to be very very helpful. I think if you're having trouble moving from that to that, you got to break it down and just target that thing itself. So if you're having trouble with color, then do this, right? Off to the side, no proportion, no drawing, no values. I mean, there's values in this, but really it's like, I'm just going to make a sphere of skin and I just want to make it look right, and just spend some time doing that. And what you will find, and what most people don't realize, and you guys can remember this, is that when you have an issue with color, most of the time it's a value issue, right? So if you're working on this skin and you come in and you say like, well, here, let me put this green down. You're like, oh, that color doesn't work. It's actually not that. That color can be put down there. That color can be put there. Look, but it's got to be the right value. See that? So that was a little bit too dark. Now I'm a little bit lighter. Now I can kind of come over that a bit. But look, now it's got green there, and that's fine. Like, that's totally fine. Like, it's weird. It's kind of weird to have the green out there. I'd probably want to make it gel with the skin a little bit more. But I can have a green there. No problem. It's all value based. So the value, or it's all a value issue. And so a lot of times people will put down a color and they think the color is off, but it's actually a value issue. And color is really, it masks things and makes you think that the color's the issue when it's not. It's actually it's actually the value. So that's the first thing I'll say. But then also isolate this and target it, and take the, like, just say I want to do a color study, or I want to do this skin tone, like a bunch of skin tones, or let's just take this object and let me just get the colors of it. Now, this is something that I always recommend too. This type of a color study, you take the color study, and just like when you're practicing with figure and you want to do gesture, you take the gesture and you just go way further than you need to with the gesture, so that you learn how to capture that movement. So here, I'll show you. Same thing with color. Studio Incaminati. That's what I want to look at. Okay. So this was Nelson Shank's school. Nelson Shanks died, actually. I think it was about 3 years ago, or maybe more. It might have been more, actually. Really, really good painter. But look at the student work, right? So the way they do this here is so good. It's so good. Look at these color studies. So when you look at these color studies, you can see like they're not just capturing something like how they see it. They're really trying to dive in and make a really hard decision about what color that is, and then they're just slamming that color. That's the best way to learn color, is to like really take something like that and just say, well, this is an orange, so I'm going to make it orange, and this is a green, I'm going to make it green. Now you make the values work so the image still works, but this is the most helpful thing, because this allows you to really push the color like into the stratosphere, and you learn the way colors lean, and you when you start looking for colors like this and you start really deciding on what color it is, and when you have to do that, when you have to look at something and say this is the color that it is and emphasize it, it forces you to see the color relationships. So that's a great way to do it. Let's see here. I want you to see this painting. I hope it comes up. There it is. Look at this painting by Richard Schmid. Let me find a bigger version of it. Let's find a bigger version. I guess we don't have a bigger version. But this painting is Let's see if I can find a bigger version. Will it get me to one here? Nope. This painting is so good because, and I'll zoom in on it so you guys can kind of see it. But you can see what he's doing with the colors, right? So you can see what he's doing. Like it's probably a little bit blurry for you guys, but look at the colors. Like, okay, there's a couch, there's flowers, there's a wall. He is deciding on what colors he wants to make it, like, and just slamming those colors. And it's not that he's making these colors up. He's seeing those colors in reality, but he's emphasizing them. He's getting a hint of it and then emphasizing those colors. Now, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard, but doing an exercise like this forces you to kind of go a direction and really, really see how things are put together. So I like that. I think that's a good way to go about it. Okay. Yes, this will be recorded and you'll be able to watch it on Twitch after this. Also, you'll be able to watch it on my YouTube. Yeah, I'll put it up on YouTube. I'll put a link out to that, so you can just follow me on Instagram or whatever, and I'll definitely put that out. Let's see. Oh, where can you get brushes? And I'll actually talk about all that tomorrow, because tomorrow is my oil painting day. So I'll talk about all that stuff, because that's a little bit involved. So, that I'll go through all that. I'm gonna be discussing what I'm doing with the brushes. You guys will see me using them. I want to take like the sting out of oil painting. It's not gonna be anything crazy. I'm not gonna do like a crazy oil painting. I'm just gonna do a composition study and just talk about that and talk about them. It's really gonna be like more about the materials and stuff, but. Let's see here. All right. Oh, nice. You do jujitsu too, Rillo. That's great. I'm like probably the upper part of white belt level. So, average person on the street, I could probably handle myself. Anybody else that's trained for a while, no, they'd get me. They'd get me. Unless I had like a ton of weight on him or something. But my first day there at the jiu-jitsu gym, I rolled. We call it rolling, but it's like wrestling. I wrestled with this guy who was like 130 pounds. I'm like 210. And because I'm like 6'3", I'm like 210. And I go in, and he just like had his way with me. And I was like, this is amazing. So, okay. Oh, so you relate too, Rillo. That's good. Yeah. With the recovery time and all that. Yeah. It's fun though. I love it. Okay, how do you deal with turpentine smell? I think I answered that. Um, oh, comic art, that's my jam. Nice. Oh, good. I'm real far behind. I'm gonna catch up. Okay. Yeah, David Finch with that Batman. Yep, that's right. That's right. No problem for everybody that was saying thank you for me answering the questions. Hey, Urban Drawer. Hey, well, it's Lightbox right now, Urban Drawer. So, so yeah, this is new for me too. Having as many viewers as this is new for me too. But let's keep it going, right? Why does it need to end at Lightbox? Let's keep it going. Let's do it. Yeah, man, that ear render is hot. That's hilarious. Oh man, that's funny. I render ears like I I I render the sexiest ears ever. Actually, I've got my wife's ear as a painting. Check it out. Check this out. You're about to see a truly hot ear render. What, can I find it? Where is it? Where is it? Hold on, I gotta find it. Oh man, I gotta find it. Where did I put it? Yeah, here it is. Here it is. Oh, come on. Where is it? There it is. Check this out. Look at that. Now, if that isn't a good ear render. These are like the different parts of my wife. Again, I love studying my family. Like, I look at them all the time and all that. It's like, but I just love doing studies. So this is a good example of me trying to, a long time ago, like trying to figure out like what can I do with color relationships, right? So I was painting it with trying to keep the same sort of color scheme, or I'm sorry, keep the same color relationship, but using a different color scheme. So this would be like, I guess like Hulk, Lady Hulk's ear or something. If my wife was the Hulk, She-Hulk. Okay, so there's that. Let me see what you guys are saying. Yep, the Mind Candyman years. Yeah. Yeah, the Mind. Yep. So some of you guys know the early Mind Candyman years. Valentina, thank you. Thank you for the props. Um, okay. Show oil paintings. Okay, you got it. I'll show you some oil paintings if you want to see them. You got it. Coming right up. Let's look at some close-ups. Look, it's Lightbox. Come on, let's get some close-ups here. We got this, which didn't open for some reason. Why didn't it open? I don't know. Let's close that. I don't know why that didn't open. It's this painting. Maybe because maybe it's just like a really big image, like a version of it or something. Yeah, so there's this painting. This is like, I would do a lot of these like quick still lifes and this kind of a thing. I would do these quick still lives and you know, send them out to the gallery. So I just set something up on a counter and do it real fast. But you can see this is sort of that expressive stroke that I was talking about, where you can, once you get it set up, you can just paint it and leave it. So that sort of thing is what you're going for. It's hard to do this digitally. You can do it. You can do it. But it's a little bit tricky to have, you know, the multiple layers and multiple things going on. But this is sort of what we're going for, and I want to get that on this portrait too. I'm gonna talk about that. So when I paint this skin here, see, it's off to the side. This is much looser. I'm sorry, this is much tighter, but I'm gonna get much looser. But this is gonna help me sort of understand what I need to do. And so I still will render. I still will render in certain spots. I'll show you that as we get to there. But like I said, we got 2.5 hours, which is great because we can really dive into this thing. But okay, so let's see. Oh, the progress. Thanks for everybody for the comments on the progress. Let's see. Internet now is a game changer. King's X is yes, they're great. Okay, yes, I thought you'd know them. Prog Power. Yep. To be the dog man, you know. Yeah. That's obscure, I know, for most people, but yeah, young artists right now, I agree. Paint Angel, yeah, it's absolutely the best time to learn. It's awesome, so awesome. There you go. You guys are getting the reference. That's good. I'm probably gonna miss stuff too. I'm sorry, guys. Please don't take it personal. There's a big chat, so I want to make sure I'm catching it. Yes, Shannon. Everybody, just so you guys know, let me just cover a couple things. Like, the videos will be saved. I'll put them up on my YouTube as well. You can check me out on like Instagram or whatever, and I'll announce that when I put it up there. I'm gonna try to stay a day ahead, so I'm gonna try to render this tonight and then have it out by at least the end of Saturday. It might be later. I'm gonna do my best. But there's a couple steps of processing when that happens. So YouTube, well, I have to render it. I have to edit it and render it. Which for a 4-hour video sometimes it takes a while, and then YouTube you have to upload it, but then it has to process the video. And for a 4-hour video, sometimes that takes a long time, and it can even take like half a day sometimes with YouTube. So I might even put it up on Saturday, but you know, in YouTube it might not show up. So, but all of that will be there. You guys can type an exclamation mark and commands to see all the different commands here. If you want to follow along like that, like you can see there, just paint with me with the reference and all of that. So let's see. Yeah, and I've been recording this whole time, so it's an hour and 41 minutes of recording, which is good. Dove art. Yeah, if anybody else is having audio issues, you know, let me know. Sorry about that. I don't know why that's showing up, but oh, it looks like the stream went down. Dang it, I probably didn't know. I wonder when that happened. Oh, the last 10 minutes. I will be putting this up on YouTube. Sorry if the stream. That's not my fault. My internet's fine. It's just Twitch. It's Twitch. Hey, Rillo, good. I'm glad you don't regret Lightbox. This is it's going to be awesome. Trust me, it's going to be awesome. I should have made a screenshot before and after transitioning. Oh yeah, I can do it again. I can do it. Well, you'll see it on here. You'll see it on here when I do it. Yeah, happy little balls of skin. That's like a creepy version of of Bob Ross. I'm just gonna paint some creepy little balls of skin. You know, this right here, this right here is a little boy's little boy's ball of skin. Don't ask me where I got it from. You know, it's like it's so creepy. Oh, it's really funny. How do I prevent hand fatigue? Do you know with my Wacom and with oil paints, like I tell my students all this all the time. I arrange my tools around a light touch. So I have like when people come to paint with my setup, they're like, it looks like this when they're painting with it, because I will like put it on, like if I like, this is me putting it on and I'm holding it like this, guys, like at the end, and I'm like not even pressing that much. Look, I can get it to work. So I use an ultra light touch, and then I adjust everything in my Wacom or whatever. If you have a Cintiq or whatever, you know, just adjust it so that when you're maintaining that light touch, you don't have to press hard to get dark, is what I mean. So I don't have to press very hard to do that. So that's a key thing, because that hand fatigue does happen. I will do that with my medium as well, and when I lay it down with brushes, it will, I use a light touch. So if you don't use enough medium, you're forced to kind of push harder. And I do that with everything. Drawing, I'll use a darker type of pencil if I need to, instead of pushing harder. I just didn't want, I saw a lot of my friends like get, whatever it is, like tendonitis, in their hands and stuff. And I didn't want to get that. So, okay. Bouncing lights of different color. How do I handle it? So at that point, so right here I've got lights and darks. Like if I've got like a ton of bounce light, what I will tend to do is like, so I have like the light coming from this direction, then we have our light area and we have our shadows. It's very simple in this one. If I had a crazy bounce light coming in, like let's say like a neon light, I would just treat it as two separate sort of systems, right? So the shadows would be here, and then we'd get like this neon effect on this side, and we'd have that. Now that would be my lights sort of for that side, and so I actually will even create sort of separate value systems for both in my head. And again, this is all just like I'm working somewhat based on these technical things, but it's a lot of it is done intuitively as well. But I do tend to kind of break it up into those two different things. Now, if the reflected light is not very strong, like let's say he was getting reflected light and it looked something similar to this or something, like he had a spot that was pretty bright, but then the rest it got pretty dark, I wouldn't even worry about that. What I would do is probably have this, I would probably have this just be part of the shadows, and I would actually reduce that value of that reflected light so that the shadows were more cohesive. So it'd still be there. I'd still have that there, but I'd just darken it so that it would read as reflected light, but would still be sort of cohesive. Like if I come out here, see, it should look darker. So that's the idea. So that's sort of how I deal with that. And it can get, complex when you've got like 4 light sources or something like craziness going on, but in general, like the simpler your lighting can be, the more it's going to read, the better it's going to read. So, an old egg tempera, yes, the glass palette, that's what I have too. I'll show you guys that. In old egg tempera paintings, the base shadow tone for the skin was commonly was an olive green. Do you think there's opportunities to use more unusual colors while painting skin? Great question. That's really, really good. Yes, I absolutely do. Everybody thinks of skin as this. Everybody thinks of skin as just this, and then you get a little bit lighter, and you get a little bit lighter, and it's not that way. It's so dynamic, and it changes so much, and there's like, the reason why me putting down purples and blues and stuff like that, it works here, is because the light goes through skin. It goes through skin, bounces out, it hits other things that are inside there. Like you have veins, you have like, a rash, you have blood, like I was showing you with all those textures. Like, I mean, you have all that stuff going on. So, so for me, I look at it as multiple layers, and I think of it as a multiple layered sort of surface. So it's always dynamic. It's always changing. Like I said, you could take someone and put them in north light, and their skin looks totally different in incandescent light, or by candlelight, or in a club, in club lighting, or it looks totally different. So because of that, yeah, you can try out. I mean, you can literally do anything. And remember that the way something looks is largely dependent on context. So let's look at Vance Kovacs. Vance Kovacs is like, I call him like the master of grays. He's like the master of grays. Now, Marshall Vandriff talks about having color. Or actually, that wasn't Marshall Vandriff. That was he may have talked about it, but William Whitaker is the one that told me this. Having color next to non-color. So you have a lot of grays, and you put them next to something that has color, so that the colorful thing looks more colorful because of that. So Vance Kovacs is like the king of grays. So like if you look at this, and you look in this guy's chest, like these things, you think like, wow, they're really colorful. Those things are really colorful, and they are colorful, but they're not that colorful. Watch. So if we bring that in, and I kind of bring that off to the side, it's actually not as colorful as you would think. Look, you when you look at this, you imagine that these colors are like here, right? It looks like they're there. Like you imagine that they are, and this one especially is so gray. And you when you see it there, though, it feels like it's like this. This red even looks super intense, right? It is, but it could be here. Right? He could have done this, come in and done that. And so what he was able to do was really use context to make the colors work. And look at this guy's skin tone. I mean, this is like grayish, like it's like bluish gray. And I mean, this isn't even like that. That's gray. It almost looks zombie-like or whatever. Now that's part necessarily, he might be going for that kind of a thing, but you can use whatever color scheme you want for skin, absolutely. And if they relate to each other, if the cheeks get warmer, if the key sort of indicators are there, it'll look good. So yeah, I love that. I like that. That's a really good question, totally. And putting a green underneath skin is going to have a different feel than putting something warm underneath. Like me having this gray background changes the way these warms look crazy warm. If I take this and I come here and I put this down, but let's just grab this here, and I put something warm underneath it. Let's say I do this and put this underneath it, right? Now this ends up looking more gray. It's kind of like, whoa, that's like moving towards the grays. But if I put it under a blue, all of a sudden this looks like really warm, so it just depends. The context is huge. So. How am I blending the colors in the skin ball? I will paint the transition, right? So this is in general how I'll work. I will paint the transition like this. I'll say like, here's this value, here's this value, here's this one, here's this one, and then there's this one, right? So I'll do that. But then what I will do is like try to find a value that's in between the two of them. So like here's a darker value. I just want to go a little bit lighter, and I'll drop that. I'll actually paint the transition. So you can see I've started out there already like, okay, this is good. This is like already a transition, right? So I'll do that. It already looks like it's transitioning somewhat, and I'm just doing 100% opacity here. Oops, sorry. Let's go a little bit brighter. Like that. So that's at like 100% opacity. That could be a little bit darker. Like that. And so these strokes are not blended at all per se, but there's a little bit more of a transition there. Now I will come in with like, let's say like 20% opacity, and I will color pick from this side, drop that transition in, color pick from right here. I'll choose something that will be in between, right? So I want something in between here and here. So what I do is at 20% opacity, come here and lay this down, and then I color pick from that transition, and I can create that sort of, so I'll lay that down, then I'll color pick from that transition somewhere that will let me lay down more strokes that will blend that. So this will come in like this. I'll grab this, put it over top at 20% opacity, then grab this and do that same thing. Like this. And so that way I create that transition from one value to another. And I can decide, I don't even have to do that. I can just come in and put this value down and put this value down and then put that value down and put that one down. And just have a whole, I don't even have to blend at all if I come and put in between values in between. So I would come here, put values in between like this. Oops, that's not dark enough. See, that's not an in-between value. That's too dark. That's too close to the darkest one. So I've got to find an in-between. That's still too light. So I come in, boom. That's in between the two. This is just gradually, it's a little bit, needs to get a little bit darker. This is, if you're not going to blend at all, this is a little bit tricky. Like you've got to find that value that's just right. if you're not going to blend at all. But this does come into play when we want to do something expressive, though. So we drop that in, go a little bit lighter, drop that in. And you see how it's starting to blend? Like that side, if I back up, it looks like a soft edge there. Like just this section looks like a soft edge. And this stuff is how I started, but it looks like a soft edge. So you can do that in oils as well, which is sort of how I've functioned. But blending a little bit is fine. But I don't want to kill the brush stroke by just blending like, and a lot of times I've noticed that people will they'll build up their stuff like this, which is fine. Like that's fine for digital. Like if you want to build it up like that, but it definitely has a very particular look to it. And so if you want that look, hey, good. That's awesome. But if you don't want that look, it's very distinctive and very digital and sort of, maybe you want something that looks a little more painterly, but let's see. Yes, Noodles. I've got a whole class tomorrow, and I'll be putting all this stuff up on YouTube. If you type ! and then schedule, you'll see my schedule, and I've actually got an oil painting class, and I'm gonna answer all those and talk about all that stuff. It's gonna be fun. We're doing that tomorrow morning. But even if you can't go to that class for some reason, it'll be up here on Twitch, and then I'll put it on my YouTube channel as well, so you'll get that info. I want to take the sting off people going into oil paints. But yes, I do use a glass palette and canvas. I use C13 or what is it? Clausen's. I think it's portrait. It's the 13 type 13, whatever it is, like the portrait one. That's what I use. I like as many times primed as possible, and linen is what I use. So it's expensive, and it's annoying that it's expensive, but you can get some good ones. Like, you can use cotton too if you want. Just make sure it's primed really well. You just don't want something absorbent, and you don't want something super thick and grainy. Like, you want the paint to go on fairly smooth. You want a little bit of grab, and you seem to have mainly hard edges. How do you approach applying the different edge types? Yes. So that probably was a good example of what I'm doing. But this is all hard edges right now. So I'm going to jump in and once I usually like to keep hard edges. I don't want to think about the edges at first. I'm just moving stuff around. So I will actually show you that. See you, Dan. Have a good day, man. Okay. Somebody was asking about landscapes too. Yeah, landscapes are a little bit different, but it's very similar to what I would get here. Landscapes, I like to work like background, midground to foreground. Like I like to think about it in those terms, and it's sort of like the overlapping of shapes. The overlapping of shapes is there's so much that's communicated there, but there's a lot to talk about with landscape. It's different, like communicating a landscape, like stuff going back in space there is different than this. So, oh, you do Muay Thai? Okay, nice. Yeah, I did Muay Thai too. They did Muay Thai at our gym and jiu-jitsu, and I'm admittedly not very good at Muay Thai, but I have a blast doing it. Those are some hot ears, yeah. Okay, nice. You had the luck to study with someone from there. Oh, Seth Haverkamp. Okay. Hey, thanks so much. I'm glad you're liking the stream. That's great. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, that place is awesome. That place is awesome, and it's probably not that far from me here in Pennsylvania. I should stop by. Well, I can't stop by now probably, but Howard Lyon. Hey, all right, check it out, guys. Okay, I got to show you guys this art. All right, check it out, because I know Howard Lyon. Check it out. You want to talk about being able to paint like a boss? There you go. Nice to see you in here. Look at that. Look at that. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, so you can just direct the oil painting questions right to Howard Lyon. Because yeah, that's pretty awesome. So very, very cool stuff. Look at that. Look at that. So skin tone wise, all of that. Look at the colors that are showing up. This is exactly what I was talking about. And look at all the colors that are existing back here. It's not just blue shifted for the background, right? It's it's green to blue to purple to orange. You know, this is somebody that has studied color, sees it for what it is, like what I was saying. So, yeah, this is awesome. Awesome. Glad you're here. Okay, let's see. Yeah, break the internet. We're breaking the internet. Okay, so let me. I think I'm caught up mostly. Let me see if I can. Oh, did Twitch go down again? Ugh. It looks like it's up now. I'm really sorry, guys. I don't know the. I don't understand the reasoning. Hold on. Let me see. Should be back up. You guys okay? Can you guys see? Yeah. Oh, Rillo, hopefully, what the heck? Why I just want to see, somebody give me a heads up in the chat if you're seeing this and you guys are hearing me okay. We can talk about, I can, dang it. Why is Twitch doing that? You guys with me now? Um, yes, I will put this up on YouTube. I will put this up on YouTube. You guys getting me now? Okay. Oh, the Zoom events are limited to a set number. Oh yeah, no. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I want everybody to come. Yeah. Listen, I mean, we're probably hitting Twitch up like we're probably slamming it. So, but don't worry. Everybody. What we were talking about, like, it will. Okay, very very good point. Okay, here. Let me see. I want to make sure you guys can hear me. Yeah. Why the heck is that doing that? Let's see. Let me refresh this, and we'll see if where we're at. Okay, good. Okay, good. You guys can hear me. Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure because I didn't know. Like, it looks fine. Everything looks fine on my end, so I just don't know, like, when when it's being weird. So, all right, good. So don't worry about that. Okay, so the rendering with 20%. I basically will create, like, I'll show you. I create a transition. I will paint the transition. And then if I want a softer edge, I will go 20% paint over top of this. And then I'll color pick from that transition and work over top of it. And if I don't want it to be labored, I will, not spend too long there. I don't want it to build up. I don't want to build it up like this, and sort of be like a watercolor thing. I like to paint the transitions as much as I can in a full opacity. So what's up, Johnny Bravo? Okay, the deal is life is a circus and we're the clowns. Yeah, that's right. Hashtag philosopher. Yeah. All right, so let's keep rolling. All right, so let's get rolling on Sam. Now I'm going to use this as a reference, like I said. So I had this sort of like, he has a little bit more of like an olive skin tone. Let's start busting that out. Now here, thankfully, digitally, we can come underneath and I can sort of lay that down. I want to go full opacity there. I know there's some weirdness with the with those lighter areas. That's okay. But I'm going to start from that mid-range area, sort of that olive type of skin tone. Now there's some warmer areas that I'm noticing. Right, so I'm going to take that and emphasize that. And it's going to look, speaking of clowns, clowns is a good a good a good reference there. We're gonna pull from clowns here. So I'm gonna make this look. I'm gonna be emphasizing the colors and blocking this in. Let me show you this painting by Richard Schmid. Okay. All right. Let me show you. There's a painting demo that he did. And I want to show, here it is. It's this one. So if he's got this, yeah, look at how he starts this demo, right? So this is where he begins. Look at how the colors are really like very emphasized, very clear. He starts it off like that. He's actually being more careful than it looks here, much more careful. And he's measuring, like, these distances really don't change much. This neck changes a little bit, but look at that. So you can see that's where he ends up, and that's where it sort of settles once the painting is done, but he's starting off by emphasizing these colors quite a bit. So I'm starting more from a mid-range place, and I'm going to be emphasizing the colors quite a bit. So it's going to end up looking a little clownish in this process. That's okay. You know, if it looks a little clownish, no problem. We can get there in the end. And actually, these shadows could be a little bit warmer too. They're a little bit, in some spots, they're a little bit warmer. But in some spots, it gets a little bit cooler. But like I said, I'm going to emphasize what I'm seeing here. And I'm not just going to, I'm going to do like what they were doing in Studio Incaminati, where I'm going to stick with the value scheme that's there. But I'm going to, like, so I see like kind of a purple there, kind of. Right? So I'm going to come in and get that laid down like that. I need to keep the values in mind as well. But this is where I find that most people have an issue. They have an issue actually coming in and laying down the skin tones in a darker value like this. But remember, values have to be relational. So I will end up lightening this. I will lighten this. But trust me, it helps to start from the mid-range and work out. I have found that it helps to do that. So for me personally, you know, not for everybody, of course, but for me it helps. So, okay. Okay, it doesn't go down for long when it does go. Okay, good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, it's probably a server thing. I'm imagining with Twitch, like with the delay. So the delay is, I'm only using like what is it, like 3% of my computer. So I don't think it's on my end. Twitch may be having a delay. It's kind of, unfortunately, the maybe, I mean, I guess it could be my connection, but I don't think so. I don't think it's my connection. It seems fine on my end, but I even had like Comcast come out and like replace the lines and really just do a bunch to make it better. But so now, like, look, I'm sticking to a color here. I've got a warmer color here. Like, again, I'm staying in that mid-range. I will end up coming like this. And like I was saying, it goes a little bit more towards the yellows when it creeps up here. I will get those values in. But for now, I'm starting with, like I said, something that is probably going to look a little bit like clownish. And I get this in. And there's actually a little bit of a, sort of like this sort of type of color that's showing up in there. Now, this might look crazy. It's like, why are you using that? You know, why are you using those colors? It looks like, you know, he's got some scary makeup on or something, you know. The reason I do that is because I really, like, the colors start to, as you start to, you know, blend and you start to render and you start to do things, the colors get a little bit more dull. And I guess, again, this is like a carryover for me from oil painting, but I always sort of err on that side because it's, as I tend to work up a painting, it gets a little bit more dull. So I like to really punch those colors at first, and it actually gets a little bit more reddish and a little bit in a lot of the transition areas, like over here, it gets a little bit more this reddish sort of orange, and then we definitely have some warmer areas for the ears. We need a hot color for the hot rendered ear, don't we? Got some hot rendered ears. We need a hot color. And so it starts to, like, relationally kind of begin to work when you see this, like, a little bit. And I'm making color choices. Like, I can't talk about every single color choice that I'm making. I'm making a lot of color choices that come from experience. So it's a little bit tricky to talk about each individual one because I have to make them more quickly. But I do start this way where it's much more intense. And this will get lighter. And actually, when it does get lighter, it's a little bit more red in that area there. Sort of like that. This will get tamed down quite a bit. We will come in with these values and come over top and be able to work this up. And there are, of course, there's highlights here. I'm not overly concerned about that right now. This is fairly bright under here. And so I'm protecting the drawing like where I need to, but I'm not like worrying if it's just slightly, you know, if I need to redo the drawing a little bit in some areas, I'm not overly concerned. So this and this. Here and here, and then I want some grays for this shirt, just something to sorry, my allergies have been actually going crazy lately. I don't know why. But yeah, I just want something sort of like a placeholder. This is not as warm. This is definitely cooler. And there's a little bit of warmth. It's not the same as like a straight up black, but maybe it is a little bit more towards the warm side. Yeah, that reads a little bit better. So you see, even grays can have a color shift. This is darker, and that is definitely a little bit warmer, a little bit darker over there. So again, this looks wacky. I know. It looks really weird. But this is how we start. And then we start assigning values as well. And start adjusting for values. Now, listen, you can't have an expressive portrait and have a bunch of really interesting edges, interesting things mingling with one another. You can't have that if you do this from the beginning. If you do this from the beginning and blend everything to death, you can't have interesting strokes. So, I mean, you can, but they don't, you know, you don't give yourself room for it to just sit there. So, part of the reason why I'm laying down strokes like this and I'm thinking about all this stuff and putting it down very high opacity and stuff like that, the reason I'm doing that is because I want that look at the end. I want there to be an expressive look. I want there to be something that's very expressive and the strokes to be very interesting. And if I can't start with uninteresting strokes and then hope that I end up with interesting strokes. You know what I mean? So that's a key thing. Now look at this eye. This eye is dark. Dark, dark, dark in there. It is not up here, right? It's not there. Gonna give him like laser eyes, you know? So it's here. It's gonna shift a little bit more towards this. It's gonna be a little bit more desaturated. And it's going to be darker than you think. Something more like that is going to be closer to where it needs to be. So again, this gets out of whack sort of and looks weird, you know, mid-process. That's okay. I'm okay with that. You got to be okay with that, and you have to just be thinking of those shapes and keeping those things in mind. And you'll see as we progress through this and as we start adjusting things that I will pull it into place. But the great part about digital is that you have Control Z. You have Control Z and you have like the ability to just put things on a layer. You know, you can put things on a layer. So it's really funny to me because you would think that everyone would be very, very risky with oil when they're painting with digital. Like they would just try a bunch of things and be really experimental and stuff like that. And a lot of people do, but I've found that actually a lot of people are scared to do that in digital because there's methods that have worked for them in the past. And so they sort of stick to those methods. And what's interesting is that I found that a lot of people aren't as adventurous when they're laying down strokes because they know their method and they have like a particular way that they do things. And so if you're working digitally, it's like you can hit Control Z, you can delete that whole layer. Like go for it. Make a stroke in one shot. See what happens, you know, and that's the beauty of digital. You know, oils make you pay like tenfold for it if you make a mistake. Like if you have to step back in oils, it's really, really annoying. It's frustrating and annoying, and it's not pleasant if you have to scrape things down, redo it. It's fine. You can do it, you know, but it's just not, that's the part that kind of is crappy about oils. Like it's just not nice to and it dries and it sinks in and it just, you know, is tough. That reminds me, I should probably like have a painting tomorrow that's sunken in so I can use that as an example. I didn't think to do that, but that would be a really good example. So, yeah, well, I know. Do you know what's funny? You know what's funny, Ninja, about Comcast coming out and doing that? You know the issue? Like, we have no choice. So we have Comcast, and that's it. Like, I can't choose anything but Comcast. Like, that's it. I have no idea why, but there's like, I mean, and when I say there's no other companies, I mean, literally, I can't choose anything else. So they could make my internet like $500 a month, and I probably couldn't do anything because there's no other other companies. It's crazy. So I know but they had to come out 3 times. The first 2 times there were people that didn't know what they were doing. The last time this guy um, really, he came in. He's like replaced all the lines. He like made it all clean in there, like where it was all going through my house and everything. It was awesome. Like, he was so good. So this looks crazy. I know, but give it time. We will work it up and we will get there. But you've got to start off intense, and you got to start off like this, and we'll find our way from there. But I definitely don't want it to look like he's got lipstick on or something like that. So I've got to be careful with that. But this actually gets a bit darker here. You'll see me jumping around a lot too. Like, I like to jump around and move to different areas. Like, see, I'm moving down here now. And the reason I do that is because I want to stay fresh, and keeping your eye fresh. Like, you just bounce around from area to area, and you can keep your eye much more fresh. So now when I get to this point, okay, I've got the colors indicated. I've got the, like a lot of this sort of blocked in. It's weird, I know, weird looking, but I've got a fair amount of it. I want to indicate a couple other things. This is actually a fairly warm white of the eye. Doesn't maybe look like that, but it is. And this actually comes up. I'm going to adjust that eye. All these shapes are going to change slightly as well, but this side is definitely warmer and darker. Yeah, that side of the eye is definitely warmer and darker, something more like that. And I promise the drawing will get better. All of this will start to pull together. But I have a couple different options now. So I could make the whole thing more loose and expressive. Like, let's look at Scott Burdick. So I can make the whole thing really expressive and like very loose like him. Like, he's got, not even like that one, but he's got some that are just very, very, very loose. Like, see, like there's a lot of strokes like sitting on there. He does smooth out the face a little bit, but there's times when he doesn't even do that. Like, it's just the whole thing is just a bunch of strokes just planted on there. And I can make the whole thing really, thick and sort of, rough like that. Or I could do sort of an in-between, which is what Sargent does. So Sargent oftentimes would do this. What he would do is actually, let's find a better one. Let's look at this Sargent portrait painting. Let's look at this. Yeah. So check this out, right? So let's bring this in. I use this as an example a lot. So if you look at this, you can imagine how Sargent sort of started this painting, right? He's got these sockets like this. He's got this shadow value, like this is exactly what I was talking about, seeing it in terms of the shapes of value. Coming in like this. And you can imagine this whole side was pretty much a mid-range. And let's just take out that highlight. You probably didn't put that highlight in right away. Look at that. If you get rid of that little stroke there, you just basically have almost like a pre-rendered area. And I didn't even do anything to the side of the nose. Look. This side of the nose, I didn't even do anything to that. It's just all just one value like that. So you can see he would do stuff like this and get the whole face sort of roughly indicated. Then he would come back over and say, okay, I'm going to put a darker stroke here on the eyebrow or whatever. And he'd go whoop, like that and put that stroke in and then let it sit. And then he would get this right here and put it in and let it sit. But the reason he was able to do that is because he sort of like pre-rendered the area. So I've got these rougher strokes here. I'm going to, I'll do sort of a modified version and do sort of like what Sargent was doing. And and or what he did, and sort of began to pre-render these areas and get them very roughly indicated, and then we'll put some strokes over top of it. But these rougher strokes that are underneath, even if I blend out some of them, you're still going to see them come through in certain areas. And I give myself the option at that point. Like, I can leave it with this really rough stroke, or I can you know, blend it a bit more. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to sort of pre-render these areas, get things in general working. And I'm just going to use 20% opacity. Let's do like, I'm going to switch between, you know, like 40% opacity, you know, 20% opacity, that kind of a thing. And I'm just going to sort of pre-render this and get these in place. And certain spots are going to stay very loose. Certain spots are going to, you know, be a little bit eradicated, like it'll be a little bit softer. But in general, you're going to see things start to pull together when I get to this stage. So I can come in here, come down like this. If I would not have stated this as strongly, these colors and things like that, I wouldn't be able to get to this point. So this is 40% opacity. I am also using different pressure sensitivity on my Wacom. So I'm paying attention to that is what I mean. Like, I'm using pressure sensitivity on there and not just pressing super hard. Certain times I'm pressing harder, certain times I'm pressing a little bit softer. And sort of building this up. Like I said, pre-rendering the area, the eye doesn't look right. All this stuff is a little bit weird. That's fine. Not worried about that. But you'll start to see him emerge here and start to see it somewhat come to life at this point. And again, you know, like if I'm not talking about stuff and I'm going to be, you know, if I'm not talking people through it, this kind of stuff just happens really, really fast. You know, I can do a portrait like this pretty fast. But I want to walk you guys through it. I want it to be like a manageable speed so you can see what I'm doing and it makes sense. Okay. Because I like being able to explain what's happening and talk about it, and you guys to have questions too. I like to answer the questions, which I will go back and answer soon. I'll hit that up, hit the chat up soon. Okay, this right here. And this definitely is like more of like a reddish reddish. It's very faint, but it's definitely there. It's almost like a reddish purple kind of show up there, but I need a lighter value. Yeah, that's where I need it. Oops, even lighter than that. That's better. It's a little bit more like that, and I'll blend over top of that. Maybe it got a bit too bright in value, but that's the idea. The color there. And now you start to see him come out a bit more. Let's do this side. Let's work this side up. And again, I'm going to be approaching this more like Sargent, where I'm going to save my expressive strokes for the finalizing of the edges in each of these areas, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Edges being like the transition of one value to another. So just coming in here, and this is exactly how I would work in oils. I would work exactly the same way. I would lay down these areas of you know, like not pure color, but like emphasized color or whatever you want to say. And then I would come in and I would adjust it like this. And I'm still thinking about the drawing. I'm still thinking about the edges. I'm still thinking about all that stuff. And I think I always do this. I make the nose too low and I make the mouth. I think the mouth is a bit too low. Let's move that up now before we get too far in to the process. So let's take this and just move it up a bit. That's better. I know it's showing through strangely at the bottom, but that's too high. So let's go to like right there, I think is pretty good. And he's got kind of a weird expression right now. That's all right. We'll work on that. Okay, so this will come in here. So you can already see a lot of those colors coming through and a lot of those choices coming through. And this is where like when I'm doing a commission or I'm like working on a painting for someone or whatever. I've done some portrait commissions over the years, and this is where they come in like during this stage, and I don't unless they're an artist, I don't let them see this process, this part, because people look at this and they get genuinely worried, which I would probably get genuinely worried too if I was looking at this part of the process. Because it just looks like it's not going to come together, like it's just going to be weird, you know, and people lose faith in you when they see that this part of the process, because it just ends up looking really odd. So I usually will ban people from seeing this this part of the process. I'll be like, nah, I'll show you when I'm a little bit further along. They're like, oh, I don't mind. People say they don't mind, and they do. They always mind. They're like, they can't they can't, you know, imagine what it will look like. So I don't blame them. It's, if you haven't made paintings and you came in and you saw this, it would be a little disconcerting. I gotta be honest. So see, this oranger like kind of warmer area kind of creeps in down here. He's got that kind of coming up right there. And I think this is pretty similar to that one over there. So we'll get that in like that. And see all those colors, like I know, like I'm blending it, right? But I'm blending it, but only to a certain point. And those colors are still showing through. A lot of those are still showing through. And I have the choice now to leave those wherever I want to leave them, and, you know, and not, you know, and not mess with them. And I'll come in and do the other side of things that I was talking about, like how Sargent would do. But we're finalizing things now. And all of these choices I'm making, there's drawing issues that are showing up that I'm correcting. I'm doing a lot of it at the same time, which is what becomes really demanding. But okay, let me just, I'm going to look through real quick and just get some, let's back up a bit so you can sort of see where I'm headed. And see how the colors, they end up almost being like, you're like, well, they look like the original. You know, they look similar to the original. And how did that end up looking similar to the original? That's sort of the question, you know, because it's just weird, because it looked so garish in a second before that. How does it end up looking more like the original? But okay, so let's see here. Let me see what you guys are saying. Yeah, I think Twitch actually has like maybe even a half or a minute delay, depending on what their servers are doing. Okay. Just to everyone that's saying thank you, of course, absolutely. I love doing this. Okay, let's see. Any tips on when when you know the colors and values are right? As a beginner, it's hard to know when you're close without a teacher overseeing your work. Yes. Yeah, Daryl. Yeah, I know what you mean. So like you get to a point where you're like, you want to observe color and see it properly, but you know, how do you learn to see something properly when you can't see it properly? You know, so you do it and you're like, oh, it looks good to me, and then, you know, yeah. So it's having a teacher really does help in that regard. It really does. But I think also, like, if you give yourself a day and you come back to it and you look at it after, like, give yourself some time and work on multiple projects and come back to it and look at the colors, and somebody that isn't artistically trained, well, you could even ask them too. They'll look at it and say, oh, you know, this color's a little bit off. This is a little bit weird right here. This isn't quite the same red. Like if you tell somebody, be super nitpicky about what color is here or what it's not. And you know, the other thing that I used to do, and it was really so that I could learn how to mix properly. It's really only a technical exercise. It's not, you know, but this is not something that you want to do all the time. But those little paint swatches from the hardware store, let me show you. Let's see. So these things, like, yeah, like this is what I was thinking of. Like I would grab some of these and I would actually just like try to match that in oils. You can do the same thing just to like, and then when you really start to be able to perceive the colors properly, then go to a place where you want to start modifying them. So sorry, my allergies. So like here, I'll show you. So remember I was showing you on that painting of my wife's ear, this one? Like this is right away, I wanted to make sure I understood what the color relationships were, what the relationships were between this color and this one. And so I went and did it in a completely different color scheme. So it's warmer in these spots, just like it's warmer here, but it's a different color range, different color scheme. So I think that really helps. Hey Jerry, what's up? Oh, you're seeing the advances? Yeah, yeah. In between the races, that's awesome. Um, we only have Spectrum. We always lose connection on weekends and when people get off work. Oh yeah, yeah. Spectrum is rough. It's funny. Like they just we have no option but Comcast here. That's it. So I wish we had. I was like, can't we have fiber optic? I actually even talked to like a government person and they were like, no. They were kind of telling me it's like deeply entrenched. Like it's not going to change anytime soon. Like I think there's some. I think they're working kind of with the politicians and keeping this area sort of under wraps. So I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, but either way, I know I can't get anything different. But my brother-in-law always has fiber optic. I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. Okay. When do you go cooler or warmer theory-wise in coloring? Yeah. So really, like the best place to start if you guys want to understand color and you're wondering how to do that, it's absolutely study from reality, study from references. That's the way to do it because I can look here and I'm looking for, okay, it gets a little bit warmer here. Like you can kind of see it over here, but I'm emphasizing it a lot more, of course. It gets a little bit more pinkish there. It gets a little bit more purple under here, sort of. It's kind of hard to see, but to me, that's like a little more purple. Yeah, you really can't see that, but but that's what's happening with when you color pick, you can't see it, but with my eye, I can see it. This is warmer right here, a little bit more reddish warm. This is more of a like cooler brown, and so you start observing, and the more you start looking for that stuff, the more you will begin to see it more clearly. Um, so yeah, so hopefully that helps. I think studying from reality, and I think there is something to be said for actually mixing it up in oil paint, because if you do mix something in oil paint, it's you're kind of forced to think about what color it is. When you just color pick digitally, it works, it's fine, but you're not forced to think about what that color relationship is. And you just have to be more aware, I think, when you're working with digital stuff. Like you just have to be more aware because it's very easy to gloss over certain things and just just kind of plow forward and just color pick. So like color picking is you don't really ever want to do it. Like just color pick from the image. Like if you're having trouble seeing what the color is, it can help. But you wanna learn to see those colors because even when I'm working from reality, I don't want to copy reality. I'm not trying to copy what I see. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is actually understand the relationships of what I see and then capture those relationships in considering my tools, considering the limitations I have, considering the goals I have for what I'm doing, all that stuff. So, I rarely can copy reality, and I usually don't want to. So that's sort of the idea. Sergeant's great. Where can we find your brushes? This is I don't have like my brushes because I just have like actually a hodgepodge of different ones. A lot of the brushes I use are the Kyle brush ones, like the ones he has on the cloud. I use those Kyle brush ones. I use some various ones. I'm just grabbing mine from other people. You can see I've got I've got Houston Sharp, like Justin Gerard, like Gregor Rutkowski, like Piotr Yablonsky. I've got like I've got just like different sets that I'll pull from. But most of it is Kyle Brush's stuff. Most of it is his stuff. So, yeah, I like have different brushes for different purposes. Sometimes I want it a little bit more textural, and sometimes I want it. Okay, so I'm gonna actually start to blend this side a little bit more because then I want to start getting into those strokes and finalizing things. And I know that I know that might seem a little bit weird, but there's a lot of strokes. Once I get this blended a bit more and I get the general values and colors in the right place, I can start actually grabbing some of the more interesting brushes and begin to really start going to town on this. This needs to be a lighter value. Yeah, that's a lighter value. And again, I'm going to be making drawing changes as I progress. So one of the reasons why it looks a little bit weird is because I haven't finalized the drawing yet, because I'm going to be working on that as I move forward. So like it's okay to move the eye a little bit. And there's usually to get a likeness as well, you have to have such minuscule adjustments that it kind of works to your advantage to just move things as you go, because you're going to have to make so many adjustments that it's not worth trying to lock it in with a drawing when it's like a millimeter. It needs to change like a millimeter one way or something like that. This eye is a little bit off. I'm noticing it now. It's a little bit low. Let's move it up. This is the other thing about digital that's just so good, right? Let's just move it up, and I think it's going to be more like that ish. And I think that's better. It's closer. Yeah, it's closer. And then I've noticed that you can tell a lot by like when you put the pupil down, like if the eyes are reading, it reads okay. If it reads okay there, it'll typically work pretty well. But you can make it look like they're kind of cross-eyed, like what he kind of looks like right now. And then you've got the eye a little bit in the wrong spot. But okay, so let's start moving forward. Let's start sort of move in and start adjusting some of these some of these edges. So I'm going to get a little bit more specific here. Now look, see this eyebrow? I need to make sure that I have the right values underneath this eyebrow, but once I do, which I think is pretty close here, it's a little bit of a warmer area. I'm going to drop that down. But then I've got a little bit more of a highlight here. This transitions over very smoothly. But now I can put this over top of it. So I'm going to grab this crazy brush, which looks like this. And I want to get the right value. So I don't want to come in like this and put that over top. That's way too dark of a value. But this simulates, if I use a really light touch, it simulates an eyebrow pretty well. Look at that. Right? So this comes in. Look, I've got a darker patch right there on the eyebrow and a little bit of a darker patch right there. So that's what I'm going to go for. I'm going to take this rougher brush and come in, start adjusting that. And then I don't need to necessarily even just leave that stroke. I can come in and adjust it. Drop this in. It's a little bit lighter right here. The highlights are sort of surrounding that, so I'm going to drop those in. And I'll come back, and I can make adjustments to this stroke, but I want to leave it somewhat loose like that. This comes in here. And I'm adjusting these edges based on the drawing that's there. So I feel pretty good about the structure just overall. There are some things that need to change. This eye, I think the pupil will need to be a little bit more in like that. I do want it to be a bit darker. I'm going to get rid of the pupil for a sec. That's way too bright. So again, I'm looking for the value that I need in that area. There's also a darker rim sort of around it. And the eyes are sort of a resting point. So I like to render that a tiny bit more than I will render the other areas. And let's see. This is going to be a little bit of a rougher indication there. And see, look, this dark line that I've got over top of here is not what's there in reality. In reality, it's much more broken up. And this line is much closer to that. So I'm making these adjustments as we go. And this is actually a little bit more of a slate blue color. I'm just kind of making his eyes look a little bit green. And I want to shift away from that. It's actually more of a gray. Sort of. More like that, yeah. And then the pupils are a bit warmer. So that's there. Although that might be too... Is that too dark compared? Yeah, I think that's slightly too dark, but very close. And then there's more of a broken edge right here. And this is definitely darker. And then, you know, the highlight is very minimal. I'm just gonna... come over top of this and just barely indicated, so we can put something like that on there. Let's grab this value in this color. And again, we want interesting strokes here. We don't just want run-of-the-mill strokes. So we don't. It's okay if it drifts a bit. You know, I can come over that and adjust it. This is a little bit too much looking. It looks too much like an eyelash there. And what's this? Yeah, that's interesting. So let's get some of this. Let's just move to a little bit of a different area to stay fresh. Let's get some of this hair. Now, why am I using this brush? Like, why use this brush for here? This hair, like if you look at the shape of the highlights, you've got some brighter highlights like showing up in there, and they aren't really, it's not really set up like there's hairs. You know, it's not like hairs like this. Like, you can use a brush like that, but it doesn't, the light and dark shapes don't really look like that. It actually just looks like, you know, an area like this, and then it's kind of a rough sort of, almost like veiny, distribution of the. It's almost like that, you know, like that sort of thing. So that's what I want to try to capture in that area. So I'll make sure that the values work for what I'm doing, but this is a Kyle brush one, I think. This is the palette knife one. And this one here is Gouache A Go-Go Tilt. Those are like my two main ones that I've been using, I think, up to this point. So now I'm simulating that breakup pattern for the hair. This brush is simulating that pretty well. But there's transition values. So I can go in here and I can say, all right, let me lower the opacity of this brush and keep that. Or I can switch to the other brush, come back and, you know, adjust that till it's, you know, got the right values going on in there. Let's see if we can adjust this. Now the trick comes in with, and the tough part about all this is, of course, maintaining the proportion and making things look right while you're doing it. Here, let's get, like I said, I like to jump around area to area, so we've got that highlight there, but I want it to be a little bit more textural. That highlight on the original is a bit more textural, so I'll put that down and then I'll carve it back. A bit more like that. We're going to work our way up to that accuracy. This cuts through a bit. This actually just bleeds straight into the area around it. It's not, I mean, it's a very lost edge. So that, to me, I don't feel like I need to prioritize that area too much. It's mostly a lost edge. Here we go. Okay, let me take some other questions, and I can be going over them while I'm you know, working on this. Let's see. Okay. You mentioned that you love gouache and oil paint too many. You're right. Does your approach to painting change when you? Yes, it totally changes. That's a good question. So the question is like, you know, should you experiment more or should you find something that kind of fits what you do? I think you should do both. I mean, something's going to push you in a different direction. And so you like, that's a good thing, but also it's okay to settle and on something that like, you know, hey, I like this medium. This works for me. You know, I definitely do that. I definitely don't just only use things that I'm uncomfortable with or something. I'm okay with, you know, I like experimentation and I like all that. I'm okay with all that, but I definitely, this is definitely more like this. I made this too rosy, I think. But I definitely think like it depends on what your personality is, right? So I'm a pretty adventurous person. And so I like to try new things and I'm not afraid to make something that looks like garbage, you know? And you know, it does sometimes and that's okay. So I would say like you need a bit of that. But you also need to kind of, if you jump around too much, you end up not sort of being a specialist and everything. So, um, so you want to sort of specialize and find something that's comfortable for you, that works with your method. But I definitely don't think you should be limited to only one methodology. I think you should. Everybody's going to have their go-to. Everybody's going to have their go-to, and that's totally fine. But if you have to do it that way, and that's the only way you can work, and every other way doesn't actually work out, then you probably are lacking some fundamentals, because the tool shouldn't matter quite as much as that. So that's probably what I would say. I would say, like, if using another medium, like, it's going to be hard for you, but if it totally throws you for a complete loop, and like you can't do anything with it, then it probably is that there's some sort of fundamental that's not in place. Does that make sense? So it sort of exposes that you don't have a fundamental understanding of value and edge and all of that, because you should be able to do it with anything. It's kind of like, if I give somebody who's a great draftsman, I give them a crayon, they can draw something great, right? So a crayon's like crappy for, a pro artist. It's like, it's tough to use, and it's kind of crappy. But if I give them that, they'll be able to make a great painting out of it. Pretty much everybody, at Lightbox could do something cool with a crayon if you gave it to them. It'd actually be kind of a cool thing. But but so it's not the tool that makes the difference. It's not the tool that makes the difference. It's your understanding and your knowledge. So anyways, but like I said, everybody has their go-to, everybody has their thing. So, like oils and gouache, they're quite a bit different. I have to really place the strokes and leave it with gouache. And you have to sort of have a plan. You have to work in a little bit of a different way. But I like that, and then you can take that back to oils, or take the oil sort of methodology to gouache, or you can figure those things out that way, and you'll see similarities, but you'll also see differences. And, I don't know, that tends to be like the way that I think about it. That's a good question now. Okay. So evaluating this, value and edgewise, that needs to be a little bit different. Let's go up in here. Okay, let's see. There's a bit of this value showing up in here, like this inner value. It's a little bit lighter though. And this is wider. And what I'm gonna do now is just back up. So I've started rendering a little bit more, and I'm primarily looking at this section, like this section over here. And I'm going to sort of finish as I go outwards. So this section's all weird, I know, but this section I'm sort of finishing as I go. And I'm looking for the overall impression of what's happening there, and trying to get a good idea of how I can progress forward with this and move to the other side. So I'm using this as sort of a gauge, and then I would build outwards from there. But because I had that good foundation of values, colors, all that stuff, this is actually a little bit brighter like this. Because I built that good foundation, now I can feel a little bit more confident rendering, and even leaving, like doing this and leaving this area a little bit more loose, because I've got a good system down underneath that. So the impression will be there. It'll read. Okay, let's do this. It's a bit brighter right here. Okay. Let's go a bit brighter right here. And I like to just, if I put down a stroke and it's interesting, like if I come in and I put down this stroke and it's interesting and it works, I just like to leave it. Like, sometimes, it's not even the most descriptive of what was there, but if it works in the image, I just like to keep it, so a lot of times I'm evaluating a stroke based on the aesthetics of the stroke as well, not just on whether it communicates exactly what was there on the original. If it works, then I leave it. Basically, I don't feel like I need to stick to the original so much, to the point where, if I make an interesting stroke, I can't adjust it, So I've still got time to move things. I've still got, ways to kind of adjust and look at things. So oftentimes, like moving an eye, like I will wait and come back to something. Like I know this is I might have to move or change a little bit, but coming back to it is going to allow me to see that a little bit more clearly. And this comes in like this is a little bit more orange. Okay. All right, now let me go back. Let me see if you guys had any other questions as well. Um, how do you decide when a piece is finished? Good question. Yeah, like who was it? Is it Michelangelo that said you never finish a piece, you just like or a painting, you just abandon it. So yeah, I think for me, like I decide when it's done, when I'm just going to be ruining it. Like if something else that I would do would just basically ruin it, then I know I'm done. So when I can't make it any better, like that's when like very easily, or if making it better would require redoing the whole thing, like really completely restructuring it. Typically, that's an issue with something that I've had in the beginning. If that happens, like in the beginning of the painting or the drawing, and if that happens, then I probably failed there somewhere. But if I can't resolve it and it's just I'm gonna make it worse, then I'm done. If there's something I could do to make it better, I want to try to make it better. I mean, in a more pragmatic sense, like if you're working on something and the deadline's there, you're done. So if the deadline's there, you're done, like regardless. So if you've got a deadline for an illustration or a painting or whatever, and you hit that deadline, you're done. You got to stop. So, but for me, like, yeah, I think it's done when it's achieved what I wanted it to achieve. A lot of times, like you'll be surprised, like you'll be working on a composition and you'll think, okay, I'm going to need to put this in to get it to read. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need that. And then you do all that. And all of a sudden, or you do some of that, you start heading down that path. And then you realize, oh, I could just leave this in like this. I could just leave this one area in and that's all I need. And that's all I need to do. And it works perfect. And you find that like mid process. And if that's the case, don't do anything else. Just stop. If you need to do more to get it to read, properly, oh, I didn't realize, but this little area needs a little bit of a bump and this needs something here. And, if that's the case, then just do it if you need to. But it really depends on the goal for that particular work of art. I think that's a lot of it. A lot of it is like, if it's a concept art piece, is the idea communicated? If it's an illustration, like, does the scene make sense? Is it achieving what you wanted, like the emotional effect that you wanted? Are you going to, mess it up if you spend more time on it? Is it going to lessen the emotional impact, raise it, whatever, that sort of thing. And so that's always the question. But it's really tough. I know sometimes it's tough to, it can be really easy to overwork something. Now, when I'm working on something like this and I'm deciding when to stop in an area, does it read, right? Does it read properly? Like, do the values read properly? Do the colors read properly? Do the edges read properly? And that's what I'm looking for. If I can get like a simple stroke and all that reads really nicely, then I can stop and feel really confident stopping, which is great. If I need a bit more info, then I will throw in that info and and just say, oh, the viewer needs a bit more info here. And that's all just down to taste, really. I mean, you could put a couple strokes down on a canvas and just call it done. And there's some people that could really pick up on that and know what you were trying to do. And then there's other people that just wouldn't get it. And so yeah, it's a tricky question, but hopefully that helps. It really depends on your goal for the painting, what you're trying to achieve, and how it's reading, But I always try to keep it as simple as possible, regardless of what I'm doing, because I view it sort of like public speaking or something in a sense, because it's like you guys aren't gonna remember what I said over these 5 hours. Like, you're not gonna remember one thing in particular that I said, right? So it's like the accumulation of the information and all that that's gonna stick with you. But you're not gonna remember. You'll remember maybe a couple key things, but you won't remember, anything like super specific about what I said probably. But if I said it, if all I did was talk this whole time I painted, and then I said like 2 paragraphs worth of stuff, you'd remember that. You'd remember those 2 paragraphs because it was simple and straightforward. And, if I said portraits are blah, 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 like, and I just had a statement like that I could make in just two paragraphs or 2 sentences, you'd really remember it. So I like to do that with paintings. I like it to be as simple as possible. I also like the viewer to sort of fill in information. I like the information to be like the viewer to have to finish an area sort of visually, and I like that because it's sort of it it throws the viewer into the process. Right now, the viewer's in the process, and now the viewer's a part of it, and they've got to sort of finish off the image and say, okay, hey, what's going on with this ear over here? Like it's just a couple strokes, but like, oh, okay, I think I see what that is. It kind of cuts in here, and that makes sense. That's that part of the ear that comes back like that, and that sort of a thing. Like it brings the viewer in and allows them to sort of be involved in the painting process. I think. I don't know. So I like to keep things a little bit looser for that reason. I am not the type of person though that thinks a tight painting is a bad one. They're just different. Like it's just and whatever I like tight paintings. I like loose paintings. I like all different types of paintings. It just needs to be a good painting. It's like I like fancy food. I like burgers. I like ribs. I like all that stuff. It just needs to be done well. If they're good ribs, I will eat them up. If they are crappy ribs, then I don't want anything to do with them, So same with art as well. And same with styles of art, I think. Oh, this gets pinkish at the kind of pinkish purple at the chin down here. So you can start to see it pull together. So now for like the next hour, what I'm going to be doing, I didn't know if I had that other reference of Violet because I didn't know how far I would get. But it was good. There's a bunch of good questions and stuff. So, but what I'm going to be doing from now till the end is just refining this and doing exactly what I was saying, where I'm adding areas that need more, so the viewer has more description. And like this eye is, like, in my opinion, could I leave it that loose? Yeah, but it's not really descriptive of what's there, and it looks weird. Right? It looks odd. It would be off-putting for most viewers to see the eye like that. And especially up against this eye, context-wise, it would look so odd. So that is going to be adjusted a bit. That's going to be adjusted a bit. And, I'm going to, add a little bit more to that so it defines things a little bit more. Because I think the viewer would need that. So I could leave it super loose like that, but it's actually wrong in a lot of areas too. So I wouldn't want to do that. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. How do you see so many different colors in the skin? Is there a trick to focus? Yeah, the best way I can describe it, because I've gotten this question quite a bit. Like I think the best way I could describe it is you look for a hint of something, right? So chefs have to do this, right? So chefs have to do this. Like you'll hear a chef like talking about something, and they'll say like, well, there's like kind of like. Or even like a perfume person, right? They'll say like, they say all those funny things, right? They'll say like, it smells like sandalwood and licorice and, a dog's paw. And like, they say all these like crazy things that, you're like, I don't smell that at all. But the whole thing is they've trained themselves to look for, like not look for, but to smell those individual smells and sort of, they become more sensitive to it. So, I noticed this when my brother and I I was in a band when I was younger. And so I told my brother, I was like, we should record an album together. We should just do something fun. And so we did it together. We just used my computer, and, nowadays you can do that. So which is great. But we did it, and we just had like a single track, like Focusrite thing that we used. And so I was like, okay, I got to learn how to engineer and do audio engineering. And, I had no clue what I was listening to. Like I was like reading these books, and it was like, well, you have to listen for this frequency range, and you have to, think about this, and the bass occurs in this frequency range, and this instrument occurs in this one, and you have to, really be thinking about that. And I just couldn't hear it. It just all sounded the same to me. And then I had some guys who were really good. I would listen to them, and they'd say, you hear this spike and it kind of sounds harsh here. It kind of sounds that. I wouldn't hear it. I was just like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And the same thing happened for me in art. Like, I remember Ron Lemon saying to me, great artist too, really, really good artist, Ron Lemon. And he was saying to me at a workshop, he was saying, you know, it's a similar situation to this where I would ask him, I'd say, well, I don't understand why you put that color there because that doesn't make any sense. And I don't see that. And he was like, oh, you don't see that? He said, well, look at that. That blue is cooler, or that blue is warmer than that blue over there. And I was like, how can a blue be warmer than another blue? I was like, it's blue. How could it be? I was like, how can it be warm or cool? I was like, I don't get this. I was like, I don't get it. Like, I said that same exact thing. I said that same thing. Like, I don't get what you're saying, you know? And he was like, you just have to spend time looking for the colors and listening to people talk about them. And then you start to see things differently. My teacher actually said that to me too. She actually said, I remember when I asked her, she was painting the leg of a model when the model was in there, and she was painting it, and she put like this purple down, and I was like, I don't see a purple there at all. It's like, how? I said, no. I said, okay, wait. I said, can I interrupt you? She goes, yeah. I said, why did you put that purple there? And she said, well, I see it. And I said, I don't understand. I said, what do you mean you see it? I was like, I don't see that. I was like, that looks gray to me. I was like, that looks gray. She goes, well, it's got like a, you know, like it's purple to me. It's got like a purple like shift to it. And what she couldn't sort of, she was doing it more based on instinct, but what she couldn't sort of vocalize at the time was that that she sort of got a hint of a color, and then she took that and emphasized it. And she's just learned to pick up on those very subtle cues of color. And really, the truth is, everybody sees color a bit differently. So you might end up with different colors on this than I would, you know, so that's okay. But she just took that and she emphasized it and made it more intense and you know, really committed and said, this is a purple, and then put it in that way. And it worked because the value was in the right spot. So that's the easiest way to sort of break down like observing colors and how you go about it. Because it's tough. It's very, very difficult. It is like, and especially when you're starting out, like you can't see it, but just know that there's nothing wrong with you. Like I remember feeling like, man, there's something wrong with me. Like I just can't see color. Like I can't see color properly. And it's not that. It's not that. It's very much the case that you just have to get used to looking for it and seeing it. And once you get used to looking for it and you begin to really, you know, study that, and you know, go get a painting of Monet's that looks similar to an area you're in, right? So like I would go and look at a Sargent painting, and then I would go home and look at a model, and yeah, I didn't have that model in front of me, but I knew it wasn't that different. I was like, it can't be that different. I was like, the models that Sargent's looking at, like I understand the lighting that he was working in and all that stuff, it can't be that different. And it really wasn't, you know, and I realized that it was his adjustments and what he was doing that made the difference. Like he was adjusting the values, he was intensifying the colors like I was talking about. He was doing all of that stuff, and that's really what made the difference. So once I started realizing that, I started making adjustments to what I saw, and I started, you know, feeling the freedom really to kind of, you know, push the colors a bit more. I felt the freedom to do that after I started seeing Sargent kind of manipulate it quite a bit. So this is definitely off, this eye. I believe, let's make it easier on ourselves and just move this. I believe it's more like this. And I'm going to adjust the nose in between here too. But I believe it's more like that-ish. And I'm going to make adjustments to this too, but I think it's more like that. It's very close to where we had it, but that's going to be there. Now this nose will come over a bit more. Like that. Then we're going to have this highlight on here. Good questions, though. Those are really good questions you guys are having. This will come down a bit more. Yeah, this is the lower, I believe. This eyelid. Yeah, I think this eye is lower, actually. It's up a bit too high. So let's adjust this. It's always the far eye. The far eye was always the annoying one. Whatever the far eye is, it always gives you trouble. But part of it too is like there's not a lot of context in this area yet as well. So I do need to adjust this and change it, but there's not a lot of context in this area either. So if we can get this far eye locked down, we'll be all right. Okay. And, you know, like I said, the likeness is not, it might not be 100%, you know, but it's fairly close, like it's close-ish. So, so that's fine. It's definitely, his eyes are definitely wider apart. So let me try that. Let me just try widening these. And again, when you have looser strokes like this too, I can widen the eyes and it's actually not a big deal. Because the strokes are a little bit looser, it actually doesn't mess things up because they kind of stitch into one another a little bit easier. Let's see. And I want to, I think it would be more, I think it's a little bit smaller on this side as well. This side is a bit smaller. And you see, even though my painting's loose, right? My painting is very, very loose and the strokes are really loose, but I'm not approaching it like, oh, my painting's loose, so I'm just going to put it wherever, you know? And no, I'm being very, very careful about the drawing. Even though it's a very loose painting, I'm still not forgetting about the drawing. You know, I'm paying attention to all that and making sure that things are in the right place, and I might need to adjust it again. That's fine. But I think this far eye needs to be adjusted. This is probably lower, actually. Yeah, I think the overall eye is in the right place here, but this needs to move over. That needs to move over a little bit. This is where digital is helpful too. I'd be doing, like, if I do a portrait commission for somebody, I tell them it's gonna be a while. Like I tell them, like, you know, to get it nailed, it's like by the millimeter to get it to be their likeness. So I make sure I tell the person, like, this is gonna take a while. You know, because you can imagine moving this stuff around with oils, and it gets really tough to nail it and get it exactly right. But I think this is lower. Yeah, I'm gonna adjust that. So, okay, while I'm working on this, I want to show you guys. That's a little bit better, a little bit better. Okay. Yeah, let me see what you guys are saying too. Hello, friends of mine from art school. We are third and fourth years are taking your texture course on Schoolism together. We plan to critique each other's work. What sort of things will we talk about when depicting textures? Ooh, good question. I've actually got a section tomorrow on textures. And I've got a class, if you guys don't know, on Schoolism, on textures. And that is, like, I would say if you're critiquing each other and you want to kind of like I'm trying to think of like a quick way to say it. I would say really look at it based on the overall impression. Like, if the overall impression, if you're getting the impression of the texture, then, you know, it's got the feel of it. Like, I know that's like it's sort of an ambiguous term, but if you can look at it, like, I mean, it sounds funny, but that's really the most important thing. Like, if you look at it and it has the feel of that, then you know you've nailed it and you've got it. If it doesn't have the feel of it, then you can start working backwards, right? So you start working backwards and you say, well, this doesn't really feel like gold, or it doesn't feel like it's slimy. It looks wet, but it doesn't look slimy. And then you start saying, okay, well, why doesn't it look slimy? Okay, let me look at John's on his class and let me adjust this. And you start evaluating it based on that, but you work backwards from the overall impression. So start with the overall impression and then ask yourself if you're getting that sense from it. And if you are, then you can sort of figure out why it is and why it isn't working, you know, and it just helps, basing things on that general impression. So there's so much that comes down to that. It's like you forget to look at it just overall, just look at it, just take a look and just ask yourself whether it actually is getting that same sort of effect. You know, if you want something to look slimy, it looks wet but it doesn't look slimy, then you need to figure out what is different. And if it's if it's like a burlap sack that you're, painting, but it doesn't really look rough. Okay, why? Why doesn't it look rough? And figure that out, and really try to narrow it down that way. That's the best way to sort of approach it, I think. Okay, so let's. It's amazing too because I actually painted my mother-in-law. I've painted my mother-in-law before, and I'll show you guys that painting. And as I'm painting Sam, my son, like it's like I'm looking at her the same color I mixed in oils for her eyes. I mixed for him. It's really weird. I remember that. Okay, here, take a look. Here's my mother-in-law. This painting, and I made hers more intense, but you can see that painting there that I did of her. I did this a while ago too. I should probably do another one, but did this here, and it's funny. It's like a lot of the similar mixtures for this, or similar colors and values. So this is going to get a little bit darker up here. And little things matter with stuff like this. Little things matter. So I'm going to come in here. Just the overall shape. Okay, so let's make this a little bit dark up here. Okay. And see how like I shuffled that around and really thought about the drawing. And this isn't a perfect likeness. Not at all. This is not a perfect likeness, but it's getting closer. And I'm always willing to shuffle that stuff around. I'm always willing to put it in a little bit of a different place to get a better sense of what's happening. You always have to be able to kind of go back to that and say, all right, the drawing's a little bit off. Let me adjust that, Now look, this area of the eyebrow, I'm going to get a much more expressive stroke here. Let's get that sort of, oops, that was a little too far. So this is where you can take the risk digitally. Doesn't hurt anything to take that risk. Can always just Control Z if I need to. Okay. Thank you for everybody that's following too. I really appreciate that. You guys will see when I'm live, and we'll keep it going. I think after doing this and seeing the interest that everybody has, I'll definitely keep streaming after Lightbox. I mean, I would stream on a very limited basis before, but it'd be cool if we could get all of us gathered on here. And we've got a Discord too, as well. We've got a Discord if you guys want to check that out. I think that I have the link coming up. I think it comes up every once in a while in the chat, so you guys can let me know if that's not the case. But so see all those colors that looked crazy and like wacky now are beginning to kind of settle in and sort of make sense in the mix. And we're able to do that while keeping it very loose. And this gets a little bit more desaturated. Comes in here like this. I'm going to adjust this eye. It's like this highlight is way too strong. It's making that eyes like stand out a lot. Okay, this comes in. This eye is, it's a bit too, yeah, that dark is a bit too. I've got to come up higher. It's a bit too dark up there, but also it's... Yeah, so it's amazing like how much it's just like what I'm really thinking about in a painting like this is really just it's a lot of the fundamentals. Proportion, value, edge, and color. I just have to keep going back to that. Okay, let me see what you guys are saying. Let's see here. Okay, how do you capture the essence of a person? Creepy Amy. My favorite name on Twitch, Creepy Amy. It's the best. Creepy Amy's in the stream. Just creeping. So that's tricky, right? So that is a multi-step process for me. So Sargent didn't like knowing anything about the people he was painting. I'm like the opposite, right? So I'm the opposite. I want to know more about the people that I'm painting. And like my mother-in-law, I used a little bit of harder edges because she's a little bit more like she's a pretty rigid person. She is a very dedicated person, very consistent person. Like she exercises every day without fail. Like she will exercise till the day she dies, like every day, and she just sticks with it. She like never doesn't exercise, and she's so reliable. So reliable. The flip side of that is that it's there's a rigidness there, and and all of that. So how do I convey that in a portrait, right? So how do I convey that in a portrait of someone? I convey that in a portrait of someone by maybe using a little bit of harder edges in certain spots, maybe around her eyes, like adjusting the relationships of the edges around the eyes so that it's a little bit harder, or maybe that if somebody has a more bubbly personality, maybe I will use more colors, more colors and more of that side of things. Like you have to sort of, for me, I feel like I need to know them a little bit. Sargent, like I said, didn't want to know anything. He didn't want to know anything about the people he was painting. But I feel like I need to know who they are, and in order to inject that into the painting. So the tricky part is turning something that is not a technical thing. It's more of like an emotional thing. Like turning that into something that is technical is very difficult. So, it's like if you're a character designer, like for Pixar or something like that, and it's like, how do you design, if you're doing what was the movie, Inside Out, right? So you're doing Inside Out. How do you design sadness? How do you design, the what is it, disgust and anger? I mean, anger seems a little bit more straightforward, and all of that, but then you start getting it down to the individual choices, and it's not so straightforward, because then you don't want to be derivative, and you don't want to, there's a lot of things that go into it. So it's really tricky. It's tricky conveying something that is really essentially emotional as a technical thing. And so you have to break it down to that. That's the only way you can do it, is by breaking it down that way and saying, that's not the only way you could do it. You could just function based on emotion and sort of do it by subconscious. Like a lot of artists will work based on their subconscious. I just can't do that. Someone like Jeff Jones or like someone like that, I feel like did work a lot just based on their subconscious. Like they just had really, interesting minds, and things would work and they wouldn't work for them, and they would just sort of explore that. But you can sort of do that. You can do that as well. But again, it's if you have a strategy and you have more of a plan of what you want to convey and then how you want to convey it, what would that mean? Like if you were doing the characters for Inside Out, right? How would you do it? So you'd say like, well, how would I display disgust, and how would I display anger, and how would I, and then that comes down to your individual choices. But you also want to do something that works with everybody else, that everybody else would understand, right? So you don't want them to be confused. You don't want to be trying to convey anger and have them think it's like, disgust or whatever. It's a very tricky thing. And portraits and paintings, it's the same. It's exactly the same. You've got to decide on what you want to convey first. If you don't know what you want to convey, you got to figure that out first. But then once you figure that out, then you got to decide on how you're going to get that across, and you convert it to a technical choice. So you say, I'm going to do this with the values and the edges to emphasize this about that person. And what's really interesting is there were some portrait artists that took a look at that painting of my mother-in-law that I did. And when they took a look at that, there were a bunch of the portrait artists. I didn't know if anybody was going to kind of pick up on some of the stuff that I did. And they were all like, oh, she must be really fiery and she must be kind of feisty or whatever. And I was like, yeah, she is. I was like, you picked that up from me? They said, oh, yeah, because you did this with the edges. And people really picked up on it. Like, they really picked up on it. I was amazed, actually. I did not think that was going to happen. So people will see it, especially artists. They'll see it. It's like when we look at movies as artists, we look at it differently than somebody who doesn't, make art. we look at it and we're like, oh my gosh, did you see how the colors shifted in this one scene? Because that's when the movie started like taking a dark turn and or whatever. We start to see things that way, and we process things that way. But the average person is just sort of, it's experiencing the art as they go and not really thinking about that. They're just sort of enjoying the ride. But we have to actually understand what is causing that so that we can then re-engineer it for our work and spit it back out so someone else can get it. So that's a very tough thing. It's a tough thing, and yeah, I think with portraits, like getting the essence of a person, I think one of the things I would say that's really important is you've got to at least, like, this is not perfect, this likeness, but it's got to be close. It's got to be close, or it won't look 100% like the person. I say that, but I'm sure there's examples of people who have like strayed from the likeness and still captured the character of the person. But it's going to be hard generally for a person to sort of accept that this is like a good version of that person if it doesn't look like them. You could draw a panther and say, this is you. You're a panther. And people might it might resonate with people, but the average person will be like, what? I'm not a panther, like, well, I mean, you're sleek and you're this, and like, oh, okay. They'd be like, okay, it would not quite resonate, so, but you just, you have to, it's a sweet spot with each individual painting, and it changes from painting to painting. It's tricky. It's very, very tricky. I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is like taking that emotional side and making it a clear statement, a clear and emotional statement, but without making it trite and without it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. So that's why we get so good with our technique. We try to get so good with our technique that the rest of it sort of, that a lot of that becomes subconscious, so we can be thinking about all that stuff. If I have to think like, oh man, like, if I was super worried about getting, this portrait to look human, like I couldn't even get it to look human by the end of this, I would probably be focused on the wrong things. I'd be focused on, like, if I was really worried about not being able to do it, it would throw me for a loop and would bug me. If I have to really focus on that, because I mean, I've got to talk at the same time. I've got to, hear what you guys are saying, respond, talk about things, paint, make these, problem solve, and do all that. And so if that wasn't a part of my subconscious at this point, then it would be tough. If a lot of this wasn't part of my subconscious. And I don't know if you've ever tried to talk and paint. It is a learning experience. It really is. Like I definitely don't do as well when I talk and paint. I definitely don't do as well. But it is something that you just have to learn. Kids have helped me with that, though. My kids have helped me because they come down and they interrupt me, and you just get used to interruptions from your children. So they interrupt every second. So you just start to learn, like, hey, I just got to move forward regardless of whether I feel distracted or not. It's like I think a bomb could be going off now, and I would be like, still moving forward. Let me just put these strokes down. My wife would be like, Violet or Sam, they broke their leg, and I'd be like, okay, well, just give me a sec. I'm just putting this last stroke down. No, I wouldn't do that. Maybe not. I did hear the story that Erasmus, like, he was so, not Erasmus, I mean, Archimedes was so into his math that there was a raid, and they came in, and he just like yelled at him. It was like, I can't remember. It was like something like the Greeks invaded or Rome invaded or something. I don't know what it was. I can't remember. But anyways, he was working on his math, and they came in and they had swords in their hand, and he was like, "Can you guys please just keep it down? I'm trying to work on my math here." Apparently, that's the wives' tale. And then they killed him. Like, he was just at his slate board working on stuff. So, there is the side of that for artists, and I think mathematicians are sort of similar, where you get sucked into what you're doing, and that's actually why it's easy for, like, things to just go on autopilot. You're not thinking about the proportion, you're not thinking about the edges, you're not thinking about all that stuff, because we tend to go on autopilot. And when you go on autopilot and you're not thinking about, oh, how do I convey this in this person, or how is that working in the composition, or is that like it's always a fight to stay aware is what I mean. Like there's always a fight to keep that awareness, and it's just tough. It's very, very tough to keep that awareness. It's a very tricky thing. Okay, let me go over some questions real quick. I'm sure you guys have some more questions. I want to make sure I get to a lot of this. Justin Gerard and his wife are amazing. Yes. Oh gosh, so good. I met them. I met them in person at LuxCon, and they're so nice. I actually bought Justin Gerard's wife. I bought a purse that had one of her paintings on it for my daughter. She loved it. It was awesome. Their stuff is so good. I mean, it's so good to see it in person too. Like it just looks so much better. But uh, okay. Would you prefer going full opacity or opacity with pressure when painting? Sometimes I want to go full opacity. Sometimes I want to alter it. But I almost always want there to be some option, right? So like if I compress, like I don't know if I would like it if it was always full like this. I can never vary the stroke like that. That wouldn't work for me. That'd be hard. Well, I could probably do it, but it would definitely be hard for me. Um, I think it would. I think I have issues with that. I need to have a little bit of transparency with the stroke, just so that the stroke can, like, there's so much like you can put and then you can fade it out like that, like an eyebrow or whatever. You can kind of do that. And I don't know. If I didn't have that, it would be tough. I could do it, but it would take a different way of thinking, I think. Take a different way of thinking. Okay, so let's see. Why is there a bit of saturated color between the skin color on his cheek? Is some kind of light effect? Oh, yeah. So yeah, it is. It's a light effect, but also like this when it starts to turn away. So we typically don't see skin all in sort of a mid range, right? So we don't see someone's skin like all in the mid range. So there's people's skin are, if you look like in different parts, like especially my son when he got fairly tan at the beach, and so a lot of his skin, if you could just see it, if you could somehow see it in just mid-range lighting or something, it would end up looking more like this. So it's only lighter like that because there's a lot of light hitting it. Now obviously like the everything has a local sort of value and color and stuff like that. Everything has that. But so his is obvious. I mean, obviously he doesn't look, like he has black skin or something like that. So he doesn't look like that. But but he is sort of in this mid range. Like if you were to look at him inside, right, inside like your room or something like that, and it would look a little bit more like that. About that. So when you see that turning into the shadows, a lot of that is. I mean, there's some other things along those lines too, like going through that cheek of the skin, that skin of the cheek, and all that stuff. But in general, you would see that most things look fairly warm like that, and sort of that color when you are just in mid-range lighting. So yeah, I think it is sort of an effect of the light somewhat. It's multiple things probably happening at the same time, I think. Let's see. Nice try, creepy. I mean, you're not getting my soul this time. That's good. I think. Let's see. Somebody's saying. Somebody was. What's that? So, I think the shadow under his eyes, the skin there has a purple hue to it. Yes. So it's very faint on mine. Like you can kind of see. Like, well, no, you can't even see it when you do that. But it's sort of like a pinkish purple, like a slight purple. So I put that in, knowing that I'm going to come back over this and adjust. And then when I'm adjusting this, a little bit of evidence of that's still going to be there, and it's going to resonate there. So, and work, because it's just a hint of what's there in reality. And I'm knowing that I'm putting it in a little bit more strong than I know it might be in reality, but that's because I want it to stay there till the end. This gets actually a little bit cooler as it goes down here. It's actually a little bit more gray. It's a little lighter, but Yeah, it's actually gets a little bit sort of cool right there. There's a little bit of a darker patch right there. Um, this area is a bit lighter though, this shadow. It's ending up being a bit too dark there. And it's a softer edge up against here as well. So I'm adjusting that. But I still think I almost like want to do this. I don't know if this is right, but I almost want to do this. Like just move this whole thing up a little bit. Like I feel like that's actually closer to what he looks like. Yeah, I think that is. I put the mouth down a bit too low, I think. So that's actually a bit closer. And again, I'm always thinking of the drawing. Even up to the very end, I'm thinking of the drawing. You know, I'm thinking of that. Thinking of getting stuff in the right place. You know, something more like that. Now, his expression is a bit different, right? His expression is a bit different. But we'll work that out. But again, I want interesting strokes for this too. I don't just want, you know, to blend the crap out of it and get it to, you know, and you know, make it look like it's not not painted. You know, I want to show that it's been painted. So this darker value kind of persists over here. Kind of comes up slightly right there. And you can see how slight changes, like, I mean, very, very slight changes will change the overall expression. I mean, they just completely will change the expression. It's interesting. It's really interesting how you can alter the expression. I mean, if I do this and just add a little bit to this, it makes him look instantly like a little bit more happy, you know? And he has a bit of that sort of a shadow right there, so I could probably get away with that. You know, but it instantly makes him look a bit more happy. It's amazing how that happens. Now he's getting some reflected light down here. Let's drop that in. Let's just put a little bit of that. Let's do that with this palette knife. Let's drop that in right at the edge there. See, and once you've got that base down, you can put more loose strokes over top, and you've got that base down there, and you've got the general values in the right place and the general colors in the right place, at least like an idea of those colors, and then you can put these looser strokes over top of it because you've got all that worked out. Now, you know, I wouldn't always render hair like this. He's got kind of this thing going on where it's like a... This is too light, so see, value-wise, I need to drop this down. I think part of that is because this background area, I could probably put something in for that. Just as a... Here you go. Something more like this. We can go behind there. Let's go behind there. See if I can go behind there. Yeah, there's a little bit of... I used the background in some of that. And so we'll carve over those areas, but... Let's put in a bit of the background. And I like to give clues as to what was there in the background. So I'll come in like this and drop that in, and even I keep it very very loose, but I like to drop in little bits of that background and try to not match it exactly, but just try to give a sense of what was there, because I feel like it makes the whole thing gel a bit more, and like whatever was there in the scene that would be affecting the skin tones and would be affecting all that stuff, will be there in the background then. So let's go back up top here, and let's get rid of this stuff. Let's actually go back to this brush, and I'm gonna go up and change it to clear. So I'm changing this brush to clear, and I can come back in and with that same palette knife erase this stuff and still have the characteristics of that brush, and then I'll come back over it after. There's some stuff right here that I could probably, like that, and then we'll come back over top. And you can adjust this how you want, but I tend to, like I said, like to get a little bit of the environment in there, just because it ends up, it helps like the overall feel. But you just have to be careful that the vignette makes sense. Like you don't have, I want to imply that there's more going on outside this, but I don't want to make it too distracting or weird. So that's why I like to stick with the actual colors and values that I'm seeing there. But yeah, let's see. Okay, it's a little better. I could probably carve into this a bit because I think I have that up at too high. This comes back. And again, this is the, I'm trying to get that effect for his, it's a little too light, I think. Yeah, the back of his hair sort of sticking up there. You can see I can place this stroke, and I really just want to get the sort of the feel of that hair popping over there. And one of the key parts of it is this dark value that separates it from what's behind there. I'll adjust this with my other brushes, but I want to come in and establish this first using a light touch here with that. It's the Palette Knife 1 from Kyle Brush. And if you keep the right value and you have the right sort of breakup pattern and shape of this, it will read as hair. Just to let everybody know, too, I will be uploading this to YouTube. I'm going to try my best to edit this up tonight. I'll see how long it takes to render and stuff. It's a big, big recording. But if you did miss any parts, you'll be able to look at it again. And it'll be up here on Twitch for a little bit as well. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to go back to some of your questions, too. This comes over a bit. The hair comes over a bit. This is actually pretty tidy on the edge here. It's not coming over a ton. But again, it's like, what I'm going for here is something that's a bit more expressive, something that's a bit like kind of pushing the edges in a lot of areas. Still getting it to read like a portrait, still getting it to read like the person, but really just trying to like experiment with the type of strokes that you're putting down. And this stuff is much more simple to convey, and it's further from like this stuff down here is going to be further from the areas of focus. People are generally going to focus on the eyes, hands, things like that, and so this is further from that. So it gives you the opportunity to sort of be a little bit more loose with this kind of a thing, but you still have to pay attention to the values. You can have it be very, very simple, but there's definitely, and this is, if I could leave you with one sort of thing to remember, I was talking about how, you probably won't remember my statements because I've been talking for a long time, but if I could leave you with one thing, what I would say is and I'm not done yet, but I'm just saying, is to not confuse simplicity with accuracy. So you could have something that's very, very, I'm sorry, not to confuse detail with accuracy. You could have something that's very, very simple, but still be very, very accurate with it. And that's a key difference, right? So I can make this brushstroke really simple down here, but I also can make it inaccurate or accurate, depending. So that's an important distinction. Like just because you put in something loosely doesn't mean it needs to be inaccurate. And, just because you put something in, with a lot of detail doesn't mean that it is accurate, so it's just, you've got to. I remember someone saying one time, I heard them saying like, Sargent wasn't a good draftsman, and I was like, that's ridiculous. Like to hear someone say that he wasn't a good draftsman, because all you have to do is try to do what he did, and you realize like how hard it is. He was a very good draftsman, and was very in control of what was happening. He was very accurate, a very very accurate painter. So that was a key part of just like what he did and how he worked. And I mean, it was he was very very accurate. So he's loose, yes, but like I said, that doesn't mean that it's inaccurate just because he's loose. Okay, so let's see. When light hits skin, it shows a little bit. Okay, good. Yeah, that's right. Okay, good. Let's see. That's a good point, Vicho, about the eyes. Being sort of the main thing. I need to add some shadows there too. In certain areas, I want to. They got a little bit sort of flattish, kind of. Hey, Alphalet, thank you for the bits. Where can I find your brushes to download? Okay, so Kyle Brush, if you go to, I'll show you guys because some other people might have questions about this too. Kyle Brush on the cloud, Adobe Cloud. I'll show you this because this will help. Okay, so I think this was the article I originally looked at. Yeah, so you. Okay, so get more brushes apparently is where it is. Let's see. Is that up there? Get more brushes. Okay, so if you go to get more brushes, and then there we go, right there. That's it. So that's what you want. So, all right, here you go. So Kyle's brushes are just for, so if you're a subscriber, you can get it. I think you might be able to get, I don't know if you can still get his older ones. Even if you don't have a subscription to Adobe, you might be able to get his older ones. It's possible. So, I'm not sure. I got them initially on Gumroad, I think. I got them on Gumroad. We were actually going to do something with, like, actually my textures class. We were actually going to do some stuff with Kyle Brush, and I think he must have gotten contacted by Adobe like when that was happening, because we had talked about I had talked about working with him and having, like, okay, hey, we'll showcase this brush, and this is Kyle's brush here, and because I really liked his brushes, and I was like, man, I want to do something with you. Like, these brushes are great, and apparently Adobe liked his brushes too, so they hired him, and I'm glad they did. But yeah, so that's where the brushes are. That's where this one is a Gouache Go Tilt. And so mine's such a mishmash and stuff like that of brushes that you can't really get them anywhere. I don't make my own. I do make my own, but it's not that many. I make like specific texture brushes and stuff like that. I don't really make a ton of different brushes because there's so many good ones out there. I just don't feel the need to do it. So I'll just show you some of what I have. So I have all like the Kyle Brush stuff. That's what I've been using here, like the paint box ones or whatever. This is Kyle's paint box. This is Kyle's paint box. A lot I use from there. I also have Gregory Rutkowski, Justin Gerard, Houston Sharps brushes. Those are really good. He has those for free. Aaron Griffin has some great brushes for free. Man, I've got so many. And just for different purposes. And the one thing I will tell you guys is that Brush Box is something that I thought, there's lots of different options. Like, Brush Box is not the only option of this. Like, as I started looking into it, there's a lot of different options, but Brush Box has been something that's been awesome for me, and it just arranges them like this. And the big thing is, like, you can search for different brushes. So I can put in like I don't know, like dots or something like that, right? And so I just put in dots, and anything that triggers that is gonna come up, right? So let's just use this brush for a little bit. So like this is sort of like a dot you know, oh, it gets, okay, yeah, there we go. I was gonna say, is it, oh yeah, it's kind of a weird like watercolor because if I press lightly, it's actually lighter, so I can't really use that, but 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 that's the idea. Like you can search in there and find stuff. It's really cool. So Brushbox is, I think that's still on Gumroad. I think. Let's look. That's been really helpful. Yeah, this is it. This is it. And it's 15 bucks. It's a lot. Like I was like, "Oh, 15 bucks for like an organizing tool." But I found it really useful. Somebody told me about it and they were like, "Trust me, just pay for it." And I think it was Kyle. I think it was Kyle from Kyle Brush that told me. He was like, "You should use Brushbox if you want to keep track of it." I was like, "Oh, for real?" I said, "It's 15 bucks." He goes, "Yeah." He said, "It's a little expensive." He said, "But he said if you can afford it, he's like, you'll love it." And I did. I got it. I was like, "Oh yeah, this is good." So I'm glad I got this. So yeah. So I mean, in terms of brushes, I mean, like you really can use anything. Like I just always, for me, I want something that achieves what I needed to achieve. So if I can lay down a stroke that looks painterly, that is a little bit more, you know, like loose, not like it's something that I can have full opacity, but I could also have, you know, lighter as well and render with it. Like I have all these like different things that I want to achieve with my brush. And if I can achieve those things with my brush, then I'm okay with it. I'm happy with it, you know? So it's more like a requirement that I set out, and I'm like, in a certain situation or a certain, you know, I need a certain kind of stroke, and I look for that kind of brush, and then I'll just absorb it into my collection or whatever. But sometimes that's only like a one-time use kind of a thing. But the Kyle brush stuff, like the paint box stuff, I come back to quite a bit. So I'm going back and looking at the values now. There's some different things we can do with the values. There's definitely darker values here. This is a little bit more, it's a darker, oops, that's way too gray. It is sort of like around there, like that sort of thing showing up, but it's a very soft transition into that area. And it's just, there's just a hint of a shadow right here. Just barely indicated. And I made him look a bit older. So you can see like the proportion is a bit off, so I made him look a bit older. Um, you know, he looks a bit older than he is. But that's okay. Again, the goal is to keep everything accurate, but to have much more expressive strokes and to build it up in that way. And you can do this with anything. Like you can do this with a you know an illustration, a concept, or whatever. If you build it up in that manner, it's gonna read, you know, nicely. And you can, if you want that effect, if you want that painterly effect. I kind of took it to the extreme on this one, like really tried to get, you know, kind of that painterly sort of chunky look. But I oftentimes will send people a digital painting that I've done, and they'll ask me, they'll if they don't know, they'll, you know, it's pretty obvious if somebody's painted digitally, but if you haven't painted digitally, people will ask me all the time. They'll be like, "Oh, you know, is that in oils?" I'm like, "Nope, not in oils." They're like, "What?" So if you work with a, you know, a higher opacity, and you are, you know, aware of what you're doing, you get things locked down, and you're more purposeful with your strokes, you can find that you can really, you can get things to look pretty direct. This is a darker value in here. Down here can be pretty loose. This area can get a little bit darker. I want to make sure that I covered the questions that you guys may have. I want to get all the remaining questions before I finish up here. So yeah, so I can work in this way and make this whole thing a little bit more loose like this, and you know, that sort of thing. You know, you can work this way, or you can see the way that I've worked down here, you know, with this, and make this, like, this is more of a smooth, like rendered style where there's much more transition and, you know, all of that, and you know, It just depends on what you want to achieve. That's the thing. It just depends on what you want to achieve. So if you want something that's a little bit rougher, that is a little bit, shows the strokes a bit more, you would sort of function in this way. And if you want something that's a bit more expressive like that, you can take it as far as you want, or just do a combination. Like just have a couple areas where it's a little bit loose like that. Just a couple areas where it's loose, and that's fine too. However you would want to do it, but there's different ways you can work. And so I kind of wanted to show you a little bit of a different method this way, because a lot of times digitally people don't necessarily work this way. And so doing an expressive portrait and kind of conveying the most you can with the, while keeping things really simple is tough. And this is much more like how an oil painter would function, but digitally it sometimes is not the way that people would function. So not perfect proportion wise, there's lots of adjustments I could make. The head got in, it's a little bit of a different shape, especially as I come back here, whatever, that's fine. I'm not too worried about that, because really, like I said, the whole goal of this was to showcase how to get those kinds of strokes and how to proceed with that, and so that's really the goal. And likeness isn't everything too. You can, it's you can stray from that. And Sargent actually did stray from that. Even portrait painters like Sargent and people like that, they would stray from it on purpose sometimes. But yeah, so you can see like there's the two different styles. Like you've got this down here, which is more rendered, than you have this. And like I said, you can do a combination of both. You don't have to do one or the other, So you can keep it loose and still convey things and have all that work. Now let me get the last questions in here. Okay. I've been watching and painting you while caring for my 4-year-old and 2-year-old. Earlier, I asked about egg tempera and whether you've tried it. If you answered, I missed it. Okay. I have not tried. Actually, I have tried egg tempera. Egg tempera is very similar to like gouache or acrylic. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like a mix of gouache and acrylic, I think, or something like that. It's something like that, I think, is how I would say it. But I think his eye, as I'm looking at this, I'm going to finish that sentence in a second. But I think this eye could actually move like just a bit. Oops. Let's copy that. Oh, what did I do? Hold on. Let's move this eye just a touch. It's somewhere in between there. I think it's better where I originally had it, maybe. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. But you can see like even a millimeter makes such a huge difference there, or even like less than a millimeter. But yeah, I haven't used egg tempera, but I love Andrew Wyeth's paintings. I go to the Wyeth Museum around here all the time. He's so good. He kind of crisscrosses with them. But it's more of a place it, and like the egg tempera is definitely going to be like you place it down and you can't do as much blending, I don't think. It's trickier that way. So you have to you could take this sort of approach and apply it to that for sure, I think. Yes, yeah, oh yeah, you can get some crazy effects from that, and egg tempera is so interesting. It's just problematic when you have to clean the paintings after 50 years, like they get a lot of mold. But the colors, how I choose, I'm really for my portraits, I'm definitely basing it more on the relationships that I see in reality. That's definitely where I start. Okay, stay-at-home dad trying to make art on the side while having to homeschool and take care of a 5 and 3-year-old. That's hardcore, like legit. That's hardcore, because I mean that's a heck of a job. I mean, just taking care of kids, like until you have kids, like you don't. I've got a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and so it is a balancing act. Yes. I mean, for sure. Like, shout out to you. Like, listen, everybody that's pursuing art, like, everybody that's pursuing art, like that is, has that situation, like, they're struggling, and you get like these small moments where you can work on your art. Like maybe the kids go to sleep, right? And you're like, well, now they're finally asleep and I can finally do something, right? That it can get very frustrating when you're working on that, and you're like stuck, and you just have these like couple moments, and you can't spend the time that you want, and it's tough. But I will tell you that you can accomplish a lot in a very small amount of time if you have the right sort of mentality and the right goals. So really, like a lot of the new schoolism stuff too, like those workout videos and stuff, the new classes, like the artist workouts, those are really good. That's kind of what my textures one is a little bit more involved in that, but the artist workout type of mentality is really good because what you have to do, if you have the right mentality and you say, I want to get better at art, and it's like, I want to be an athlete, right? Well, what kind of athlete? Well, are you a rower? If you row, then you don't need to worry about like squatting a bunch of, maybe you do. I don't, well, I guess, yeah, maybe rowing does take that. But what I'm saying is like, you find what is important for you to learn, and then you really target that stuff. So you find out what's important for you to learn, you really target that stuff, really create exercises that do that. So like, let's say you wanted to be a character designer, right? Well, that's a different. Being a character designer is a different set of skills than being, like an environment designer, right? Or doing environments, or even, of course, working in 3D or something like that. So you want to find your skill sets, find your skill set, and what you want to do, and then specialize and find the exercises that you need to do to get to that point. So like there's different things. Like if I wanted to be a landscape painter, there's a completely different set of exercises that I would do as opposed to being a portrait artist, right? So I think that's important to distinguish and then find out what those exercises are, because when you have very little time, you want to target all the fundamentals and all the key things that you need to learn to be good in that particular arena. So if you're a concept artist, like there's a whole set of things that you need to know. And it could be different for a character artist that's a concept artist, or it could be different from a vehicle. You could specialize in vehicles or something, right? Then you're like very perspective heavy. Like, organic forms are not going to be quite as prominent for you, that kind of a thing. So you really want to think through that. And I think it becomes, when you have kids or you have something that's just taking up all that time, it becomes infinitely more important for you to strategize. So that if you have 30 minutes, those 30 minutes that you commit to every day, those 30 minutes that you do, you make sure that you are being super efficient with those. 5 minutes on ellipses, like this on this and this on the, and practicing this, and you will get a lot better. Like you can do it. You can do it. Now, it will take you longer than someone else, but you will get better. And it's just, I think specializing helps, and just finding very key targeted exercises, and people that have experience in the field can help you with that. So, okay, let's see. Okay. I would love to watch without my kids interrupting every 5 minutes. Yes, I'm with you. Do you know, I literally today, out of my mouth, like today, before I came down to stream, I literally said, why is it that every time I start, like I have a 4-year-old, I was like, it's like I'm talking and she just starts talking. She just starts talking. Like, I was like, she just waits for me to talk. And my wife goes, no, it's not that. She goes, she's just talking to me all the time. So that's why it's interrupting, you know? So, okay. Yes, Ron and Vanessa Lemon are amazing. Saw Vanessa at that IluxCon too. She's a killer painter. Yeah, the eyes. Yep, Paul. The eyes are not in the right place. I don't think they need to be bigger, but I think they're wrong. And I think it actually is a consequence. So there's a couple of different things with this. So there's a consequence of the head structure of the head, a little bit of the head being wrong, and the eyes being in a little bit of a different shifted position that's not quite right. I almost want to like take this eye and move it like down a slight amount, but then when I do that, it's kind of a little too far down. Maybe not. That might work. It's wait a minute. Why did it do that? Yeah. So let when I go down like that, it messes it up. Yeah, it moves it back up. Why does it do that? Oh, all right. I'll leave it there then. Um, but but yeah, there's multiple things that are going on, definitely. But yeah, there's definitely some things that would need improvement and stuff. But hopefully you guys you could see how when you build it up in that manner, I could keep going. Give me like an hour or two of just focused work, and then all of a sudden it will read it much better. And all of that can be resolved. But I really wanted to take pains with this too to like try to keep that loose feel and really just apply those strokes like that. But you're absolutely right. The far eye is a little low. Yeah, yeah. Yes. So the placement of I think it's so. This is what I've noticed too. So this is what I've noticed too. Like and I might have fixed it from when you guys actually made those comments, but and I need a fresh look at it too as well. But what you'll find is that like the context will change things too. So let's say the nose is like slightly too low, which I think it is. If that's the case, then what you'll find is that will have an impact on how the eye will look. It's amazing how that will change your perception of another area, which is so weird. Like if I do this and copy and paste this over like that, move it up. Let's do an. Why is it? Let's move it over. Right, if I take this and I move it up, it changes your perception of everything as well, right? So you change that, move that over. Now that changes your perception of the eyes. I think that's actually closer to what his face looks like. You can see I went down to the right a little bit. And so that helps with the eyes a little bit. That actually helps. Now the mouth is too low a little bit, and stuff. So it's interesting though, but you'll see context actually can change it. So what you might think would be the first thing that's wrong, oftentimes is not the thing that's wrong. It's actually, usually like the second or third thing, or something else is contributing to it looking wrong. So, yeah, so it's interesting. It's very, very interesting that way. And I've noticed that about paintings, but it looks better now. I mean, as a whole, if we get rid of this, and look at it, like, at this point, you sort of evaluate it to see whether it's reading, reading well. But yeah, good eye. Everybody has a good eye in here. It's good. It's tricky though. Like you have to approach fixing these things almost like a detective would. Like you can't show up to the scene of a crime and be like, oh, I found the wife's purse on the ground. She did it. She committed the crime. I found the husband's wallet. He committed the crime. You can't really do that. You've got to like get all the evidence, and you may actually make the situation worse if you start pursuing the wife or the husband, and they're obviously not the one that did it. Same thing here. If you make a change when that's not what the issue is, then you will actually make it worse. So it's very, very, very tough that way. But oh, thanks. That painting of my mother-in-law is arresting. Yeah, exactly. And see, you're getting that feel. There's a whole bunch of technical things that happened with that painting that caused that feel. Zombie Cell. Hey, thank you. I'm glad you worked through that class. I'm glad it worked out for you. That's awesome. Yes, I do flip the painting sometimes. Actually, what I do more often than not, Mix, is I will actually walk away. So obviously I can't do that right now on a stream, but I will walk away completely and just do something else. So for like 5 minutes, and this is where it's nice. I'm up by my house. Like my kids my kids interrupting me, it actually does help me, because they'll come in and interrupt me, and then I look back and it's fresh, which is really good. But walking away does wonders for me, and I will walk away and just totally forget that I'm painting, totally forget all that, and walk away and just talk with my family or go outside or 5 minutes, something like that. Come back in, and then bam, you see everything like super clear because you get dead to it. You look at it enough, and you start to become dead to it, and just like a sound engineer, they always would say they would take a break and put like earmuffs on or something like that, and they would go out somewhere else, and then they come back and they're like, wow, how did I miss that 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 guitar was so loud or this was so loud, I wouldn't have heard that. Like you have to stay fresh. It's really tough. Oh, but you are a panther, creepy Amy. Chinchillas. I love that. You guys, your names are awesome. The chinchillas. How to get better at something subjective as composition. Okay, so when something is very subjective, I agree with you there. It's very subjective. Um, you, I think the way to get better is to understand what, like, find a painting where you know what the artist intended, right? You know what the artist intended, you know what they want to get across. So maybe you find illustrations for a story where you know what they're trying to get across in that scene. Or look at something like Pixar where they're really going to be very clear about what they're saying, and then you look at the decisions they made to get there. So you say this is what they wanted to get across in this composition. They wanted it to be dark. They wanted it to be like if you look at like what's the Wreck-It Ralph, like the candy area. What's it called? Candy air. I'll just do this. So like if you look here on Wreck-It Ralph, like, and you look at, what was that place called? Oh, Sugar Rush. That was it. That was the game. Yeah, so like if you look at Wreck-It Ralph and you look at Sugar Rush, right? And you look at what are the choices they made here? Obvious ones color-wise, but what about the shapes? What about the forms? What about, the edges? What about the values? All of that. What are different compositions? Then you look at like Pyotr Yablonsky, right? And it's like, let's go to the other side of the aisle, right? And you look at this. What choices did he make in this? These are the extremes, right? So these are the extremes, but you get a handle on how people think when you start to do that. And you start to look at their choices they made. And I have found that it's most helpful to look at the extremes, to look at all the way on one side and look at it all the way on another side, because that's going to be the more obvious choices, and then you can sort of find things that are in between. So for me, what's something as ambiguous as that, that's pretty funny. I like to just study how other people did it. So see, a little bit more fresh looking at this face, a little bit more fresh. Okay. Oh yeah, I think Sam will probably like it. I don't know. When I paint him, he kind of is like, a lot of times is like, Hey Sarah, thank you. I'm glad it looks amazing. I appreciate it. Okay. Okay, let's see. I drew this with two brushes. So I used this brush, so everybody knows, the Kyle brush, gouache, a go-go tilt. I got to be honest, I would use that brush even I mean, just based on the name, gouache, a go-go tilt. Like, I'm sorry, that's just gouache, a go-go tilt. It sounds like a song. It sounds like a Steely Dan song or something. Um, and so I use I use that quite a bit, and I used this one, which is the palette knife, the paint box. I think I may have used another brush in there really quick, but those are the main ones. This is the palette knife, like the paint box one. And yeah, I've used that pretty much in all different places there. So you can download all these from Kyle Brush on the cloud. Do I have that up? Do I have that window up? Do I have that? Yes. So here, if you go here, you can see, like, on Adobe, it's here. This is what we were talking about earlier. So, all right. Yeah, this is gonna stay on Twitch. I'm also gonna post it on my YouTube. So. Oh yeah. Meester Adam. I thought it was like Take on Amsterdam, but it's Meester Adam, which is hilarious. Yeah, the journey of an absolute rookie. That was me. Yeah. Who knew posting all my garbage would would end up being inspiring? I never thought that. That's for sure. Um, it will take a long time to upload the YouTube video, because YouTube has to process it before I can give you the link. They have like a massive time where they're processing it and stuff like that. But I'll, you know what? If it goes up and I'm able to get it up there, because I have to edit it too. I want to edit the video and take out some of the parts. Like, there's just a couple parts where, like, Twitch went down and I want to take that out. So, um, let's see. What's this? Oh, yeah, there's the mega pack. Oh, yeah, you're just posting up the mega pack. Gotcha. There you go. Yeah, then you can download that right from Adobe too. So, let's see. When trying to get a likeness, do you prefer starting out loose and building towards accuracy? Yes, I do. I like to start out loose like that and build towards it because that way I'm okay shifting with it, shifting things. If I start out really, really tight and do that, inevitably I'm gonna have to move it anyways. And when I have to move it, it's like this is what I should say. Like if I start really tight with a drawing like that, I trust the drawing too much. So I trust the drawing too much and I kind of move forward. Either that happens or I don't trust the drawing and I have to end up moving it anyways. So if I have to move it once I put the paint down anyways, I might as well just do it from the get-go. So just paint loosely from the get-go. So I like to kind of bring it into focus with something like this. Sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you have to keep things where they are and you can't do that. But in general, that's what I like to, with this kind of a study, I like to, and you see like there's issues come up, right? Like the eye might be a little bit off, like you can adjust that. The more time I'd have with this, I might come back the next day, look at it and say, ooh, I'll tweak that and adjust that, and change that, and I'll see it much more fresh tomorrow. So, but so you have issues, but the nice thing about digital is you can work that way, and you don't suffer at all. You don't suffer at all. If I did this in oils and I had to move that stuff up, I'd have to be really careful during the process. I'd really have to be focusing and really stay aware. I'd have to walk away a lot, come back, really, because you don't want to move that stuff up. You can cut the canvas, I guess, and move it up, but you don't want to do that. So, Magpie Dragon. Oh yeah. Oh, you're just saying thanks for the for the link. Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good link. Winged Dante. Hey, thank you so much. I'm glad it's been informative. It was fun. I got more coming all day tomorrow. You guys want to see my schedule? It's right there. It just came up, or it's up a little bit further. I'm going to be talking about how to get into oil painting, like what you want to do with the materials. Yeah, and then textures in the afternoon on Saturday, and then Sunday is, what am I doing? Oh, yes. Sunday's going to be a fun day. Oh, wasn't that in a song? That's my fun day. It's a Monday. Yeah. Just a manic Monday. That's right. You guys have no idea. You probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But yeah, so on Sunday, I'm going to start with a sketch. And then what I do on my stream a lot is like, I'll just sort of, I just like to have fun and like build a character. It started off where I would do a texture study and then we'd kind of turn the texture study into characters. And I showed you guys that progress of all my textures. I'll show you again. And you can see a lot of them we've turned into characters and I put them in there just for fun. So there's like this weird Pac-Man that's like got a leg on it. I can't remember what we were talking about there, but look at the giraffe, right? So we turned the giraffe into that, and this grape my son was telling me what to do with this grape. And so I'm going to start with a sketch, just a fun little sketch. And we're just going to talk and have fun and explore ideas. And maybe, if you guys have an idea for something, that you want, I'll grab a reference and talk about how to utilize that reference and stuff. And yeah, I mean, like you can see, like I've got weird stuff like this. Here's an example. This is a frigate bird's throat right here. And this is what I just turned it into some weird, I don't even know. Like that happened on the stream, I'm sure. So we have fun with that. So that's what we're doing on Sunday. Oh, that squeaky chair. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Sketchy. You know what? I will spray that with WD-40 before tomorrow. It's so annoying. I know. I'm sorry. I don't even notice it now, but I apologize. Oh, man. Thank you, everybody, for the follows, by the way. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Okay. Good. Thank you, guys. I'm glad you guys liked it. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, your 5-year-old does the same thing. You can't concentrate. Exactly. Hey, thanks, Chocobo Chick. I read that wrong. Chocobo Chick. Yeah, thank you. Good. I'm glad. So I love teaching, and I've been teaching for a while. So like certain things, I try to think about the way to describe it to someone so it makes sense, you know, and because that's the way it sticks. It sticks if you can get a good analogy, it will really stick. Like that just it's never a one to one. Like you can't ever do it one to one, but it just helps it stick. So yeah, okay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. This was a blast. This was really fun. Hopefully, everybody learned something from it. And like I said, I'll be posting this up on YouTube. I'll edit just those little parts out where the stream where Twitch went down for some reason, but it was pretty good after about 2 o'clock. It was pretty good. So at least maybe a couple times, but thank you guys. Thank you for the awesome questions. Thank you for your interest. And I'll be back tomorrow, 9 o'clock Eastern time for the oil painting discussion, just talking about all that. And you guys saw my schedule. You can check all that. So stop back in again if you want. But you guys are awesome. Thank you. This was really, really fun. And to be honest, I didn't know. It blows my mind to have like 500 people in here, 400 people in here, because that's not normal for my streams. You know, I'll stream and it's like 30 to 50 or something like that, you know, and then probably 15 and 20 are talking, you know. So yeah, thanks. That kind of blew my mind. Very, very cool. So we'll try to keep it going even after Lightbox. It'd be fun to keep going if people are interested. So thank you guys, and I will catch you guys tomorrow. Everybody for the stream. Enjoy Lightbox in general. I just want to tell you guys, like, have a blast. Go in there, look at all the different artists, buy all their stuff, you know, and make sure you catch the demos that you want. Get in there and draw with some people that want to draw with you, you know, and you know, on those canvases, and you know, have some fun. Just explore it and enjoy it, and yeah, this was a blast. So I'm looking